Hello, hello! How is everybody? How are you guys doing? I see we've got close to 500 people watching. First things first, first order of business. Where are you guys tuning in from? Let me know in the comments what city, what state, what country you're in. And I love to see the international audience. There we go. The chat's exploding. Very, very good. Germany, London, India, Venezuela, Flavortown. It's going too fast. There's Switzerland, Puerto Rico, Cleveland, Miami, Argentina, Russia, Venezuela, Portugal, Siberia, Essex, Maryland. Wow. Wow, it's exploding. Libya, Tripoli. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Italy, Australia, Johannesburg, Miami. It's absolutely overwhelming. It really is. It's great to see you guys. Obviously, you already know what the subject matter will be, but we're going to get into it. We're going to dive into the top news stories and break everything down. And if you're new here, do consider subscribing. Thank you, Bella, for the super chat. You're very kind. And I appreciate the sticker very much. You see, you guys are still going. One person says, I'm from Babylon. Are you really from Babylon? I'm going to talk about Babylon in a bit, actually. Coincidentally. If you guys are following me on Twitter and what I'm commenting there on the news, you might have seen that I mentioned Babylon earlier today. And you would probably know in what context. And of course, I'll cover that with you in a second, so don't worry. There was a story about Ukraine, and it relates to Iraq. You'll see why, which is very interesting, and we'll cover that in a second. But yeah, that video, by the way, I posted a video yesterday in Arabic, and I mean, I really have no clue how many of the audience are Arabic speakers. I know I've got a lot of fans in Iran and in West Asia in general, but I decided to post it anyway because I figured, you know what? I'll just post the same video again with the English subtitles, but I haven't gotten around to doing that because, well, work. In any case, we're here. So let's see what we can start. Which news story we'll start with. There's really a lot to cover. It's quite a good chunk. So here, let's start with the prisoner exchange. I don't know how many of you have been keeping up with this news. It's quite substantial. So, just give me 1 second. Here we go. So this is huge news. This is very, very big. The United States and Russia have done a prisoner swap, a prisoner exchange. Okay, so there's an American who's been imprisoned in Russia. His name is Trevor Reed. He's a U.S. Marine. And there's a Russian who's been imprisoned in the United States. His name is Konstantin Yaroshenko, and he's a pilot, okay? And what the United States and Russia have done is they've swapped these two, right? So Trevor Reed, the U.S. Marine, he's now back in the States with his family, and Konstantin Yaroshenko is now back in Russia with his family. And here's the headline from the New York Times. It says, Russia releases former U.S. Marine in prisoner swap. You can see that's Trevor Reed over there. And this is very significant. Before I go into the story, just so you know, tomorrow I will be interviewing Konstantin Yaroshenko, so the Russian who just got swapped for Trevor Reed. And he's back in Russia, and this is a crazy coincidence because he was David Mendoza's cellmate, if you can believe that. So again, for those of you who've been following my coverage of Julian Assange's case, Julian Assange's lawyers, they mentioned in court, they mentioned the case of David Mendoza as an example that you cannot trust promises, diplomatic assurances given by the United States, because David Mendoza received promises like they're trying to give Assange, and the United States broke those promises. And so I published documents from Mendoza's case, and turns out they were cellmates. So I'll be interviewing Yaroshenko tomorrow, and I think this is huge, right? Because this is not just any prisoner swap. It's taken place during this war right now, this proxy war between Russia and the US. So you cannot ignore the backdrop, the geopolitical context that it's taking place in. And his story is absolutely crazy. I have his case files, and you'll see tomorrow when we go through it. Yaroshenko, they framed him, for lack of a better word. Okay, so the United States, they didn't extradite him to the US, they kidnapped him. The nice way of saying that legally is rendition. It just means kidnapping. And this is weird, right? Because Liberia has an extradition treaty with the US. Why would you feel the need to kidnap someone if you're sure that you can bring charges against them and so on? So that's big red flag number one. Number two, after they kidnap this guy, they don't tell the Russians. So correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, when you arrest an official, when you arrest a citizen of another country, you're supposed to inform the officials of that country within 48 hours, right? So in this case, the US would have to tell the Russian foreign ministry that, hey, we arrested one of your nationals. His name is Yaroshenko, and we're charging him with this and so on. They didn't even do that. Now, the third one, they tried to get him for drug trafficking. Now, here's the crazy thing. Again, this... I didn't want to go through the whole story now because I'm leaving that till tomorrow, but still I feel like it's important to have this background information. This guy didn't speak English at the time. And they're accusing him of wanting to traffic drugs to the United States. First of all, he doesn't traffic drugs, okay? And he's flying between South America and Liberia. So the United States has no jurisdiction. They have nothing to do with this guy. And they basically get two undercover agents in the same room with him to talk about trafficking to the US. And that's how they manufactured the jurisdiction. Do you understand? So they say Yaroshenko was in the room when cocaine trafficking to the United States was being discussed, and therefore he is implicated and we want to take him. This is crazy, right? Because like the possibilities that this opens up, and I mean very negative possibilities, the dangers that this opens up, I mean, it's endless, literally endless. And this is, again, one of the big issues with Julian Assange, if I can draw a parallel, is that the guy's an Australian citizen in the United Kingdom, and yet the US wants to basically, nab him. They want to take him and extraterritorialize their laws on Europe, on the UK, and treat it as if it's their jurisdiction. And this really, this is crazy to me because I'm trying to inform you about how much power the United States exerts through the US State Department, through the US Department of Justice, how it has ultimate control over foreign governments, foreign judiciaries, foreign embassies. They can do anything. They really have global jurisdiction, and they either, they can either do it the way they're doing with Assange, or they do it in other cases. They just kidnap people. They render them, which is a nice way of saying that. And of course, I don't need to tell you about how a lot of people ended up in Guantanamo Bay. Obviously, each person has their own story. Their stories are unique. So I'm not trying to compare Yaroshenko to Guantanamo Bay. But the principle, the idea that you don't extradite someone, which is through a legal process, you just kidnap them. That's true, right? So in any case, I'm going to go through all of this with him tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central European summertime. So don't miss it. For New York, if you're in New York, that's noon for you. Okay, if you're in the UK, that's 5 p.m. for you. If you're in Los Angeles, that should be 9 a.m. for you. Wake up early. But in any case, that's the prisoner exchange that's taken place now. And I just want to go back to the article very quickly. You can see here they say that they discussed in so a plane carrying former Governor Bill Richardson of New Mexico and his team landed in Moscow the day before the invasion of Ukraine in February. So that's February 23rd. And their mission is to discuss the possibility of a prisoner swap that could free Trevor Reed, an ailing former U.S. Marine held for 2 years on what his family considered to be bogus charges of assault. And so, again, I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but you can see the deliberation. And I'm going to let you in on a secret. This is going on. This has been going on for quite a while. So you might get the impression from this article that they only started negotiating for this guy's release on February 23rd. It's not true. It's been going on for a long time. And then they say, of course, Mr. Richardson had spent years working to secure hostage releases through his nonprofit organization. And this intense diplomacy ended with the simultaneous release on Wednesday. So that's, we're talking about April 27th. On Wednesday, of Mr. Reed and Konstantin Yurychenko, a Russian pilot sentenced to a lengthy prison term in the US on cocaine trafficking charges. So they actually gave him 20 years. Okay? And I'll show you tomorrow all the files of his lawyers complaining how this is outrageous conduct by the US government. They kidnapped this guy. It's a laundry list. It's really something incredible. In any case, let's leave it there. I'll tease you, and you'll find out more tomorrow during the interview. Okay, let's leave it there. I'm just giving you basic background information, and then hopefully we'll dive into more detail tomorrow during the interview. Okay, so 6 p.m. Central European Summer Time. So that's 5 p.m. UK, noon in New York, 9 a.m. Los Angeles, and we'll take it from there. Okay, I somebody in the comments said we should, what was it? We should swap Biden for Putin? That's funny. That's funny. I see we've got 1,000 people watching. Please make sure you've hit the like button. If we have 1,000 people watching, we should have 1,000 likes. Okay, so right now we only have 600 likes. We need to have the same amount, equal amount. Let me move on to the next topic. Okay, so how many of you guys were watching my interview with Pepe yesterday, Pepe Escobar? It was fun, right? I think he said yesterday that we should do this more often. I wholeheartedly agree. We always have fun with this, despite the subject matter, right? I agree. We should do this more often. It's really what's the word? Cathartic. Yeah, I see a lot of you were watching. That's good. That's very, very good. I'm glad you were there. Wonderful. I'm just reading your comments. Anyway, let me continue. So, we talked about, me and Pepe, we talked about something about this disinformation board that they've erected now. And I want to cover that with you guys. I want to do a little dive into that, okay? So the Biden administration have basically created what people are calling a Ministry of Truth. Yes. So this is something under the Department of Homeland Security, which is going to decide what is disinformation. Let me translate what that means. The US government has basically created a board that is going to declare anything they don't like as disinformation. Yeah, that's what's going on. So this is the headline from CBS News. It says, Disinformation Governance Board, that's the official title, to tackle spread of misinformation in the United States, focusing on Russia and the US-Mexico border. The Department of Homeland Security is setting up a Disinformation Governance Board to try to counter the spread of false information. The board will focus on disinformation coming from Russia, as well as misleading messages about the US-Mexico border. The immediate focus will be on misinformation from human smugglers who spread false claims about US border policy to migrants to help drum up business. Let me translate this sentence for you. Do you remember when Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they ran for the White House as the Democratic Party nominees, and they said, oh, Trump's a fascist and Trump's a racist. I mean, he is. He's certainly a racist. But they claim to be better than him, right? They claim to be, they're woke and they support equal rights and they are for diversity and all these nice things that sound great, right? On at face value. And then they get in, and then Kamala Harris is standing there. You've heard this in the crowd dance. And she's like, don't come. Don't come. Don't come to the US. Go away. And then Secretary of State Blinken, during his confirmation hearing, he says the same thing, right? He says people should not come to the United States. And they're talking about, of course, they want to call refugees migrants, and migrants economic migrants. They have all sorts of names. If you ask me personally, look, if you are honest and you understand the United States history in Latin America and Central America, it's no wonder people are fleeing. When you destabilize and coup their governments 50 times over and just completely ruin any hope of a stable development as a country, of course you're going to have this situation. In any case, regardless, you have children of themselves migrants. I mean, let's not forget the United States as a country. Everybody, Joe Biden, what does he keep telling us? I don't know. His grandfather or, his forefathers are Irish. Yes. Malarkey, he keeps saying. And Kamala Harris, I think her mother is from India, if I'm not mistaken. Blinken himself, he's part Polish, I think. So the irony here is that you have people they've come to the United States seeking refuge, right? Blinken has said that himself. And then they are denying refuge to others. Very woke, that's very, very sympathetic of them. Such compassion. And so what they're saying here is basically that we don't want anybody criticizing the U.S. border policy. They don't want anybody coming to the U.S. That's what this means. Now, I went off on a bit of a tangent, but I think this is valuable background information. So afterwards, we had Jen Psaki, who was talking about what this board does. And I'll play you a clip of her speaking. She's the White House press secretary. Let's take a look.
I think what's important to note here is what the board is doing, which is continuing what is important disinformation-related work that began under the former administration. The fact sheet that they put out, what they noted yesterday, what they noted in there is that this is meant to, one, the first bullet was about protecting privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties, and the First Amendment. They said the primary mission is to establish best practices to ensure that efforts to understand and respond to disinformation are done in ways that protect privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties. I'd also note that the first example they gave about what they're going to do is support the Department of Homeland Security's ongoing work back to the former administration to address how and understand how misinformation spread by human smugglers that prey on vulnerable populations attempting to migrate to the United States.
Right. So this is a cover story. Right? This is a cover story. This is just the excuse to get this through the door. The problem with all of this is that during the last years, you've seen specifically from what you would call neoliberals or Democrats, their idea of disinformation is anything they don't like. And we've seen this, for example, with the Hunter Biden laptop story. So, right on the cusp of the US election, Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, there's this story that comes out in the New York Post about Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and his laptop. Somebody, they got the contents of his laptop, and he's got all this information about his corruption, business dealings in Ukraine and China. It's very bad. It's bad press. And what happened is you had all of these intelligence officials, they signed this joint letter, saying that this is a fake story, the information is fake, and it's from Russia. It's Russian disinformation. Now keep in mind, Joe Biden himself and his son not once came out and said this is fake. When someone publishes some bullshit about you, right? Usually, especially if you're running for president of the United States, you would be inclined to come out and say, well, that's not true. This is obviously fake. But they didn't. They got the U.S. intelligence community and the mainstream media and the corporations to do it for them. And so Twitter and Facebook, they blocked this link from even being shared. And most importantly, they blocked the New York Post from sharing any posts on their Twitter account, right, and their Facebook account. And when you would share the link, they kept changing the policy from one day to the next. It either wouldn't work at first, and then there was a label. I don't remember the details exactly, but this is what happened, right? They basically tried to censor the story and kill it, even though it's true. And the New York Times corroborated this just a few weeks ago, so we know the story was true. And it's an example of how even when something is 100% factually correct, the establishment, the media, the corporations, and, of course, the intelligence communities will come out and try to kill it by saying, oh, it's Russia, Russia. Like as if this is the 1950s. It's neo-McCarthyism. Really, neo-McCarthyism. And, of course, anybody who spreads the story is you're also a Putin puppet and so on. And you just want to help Russia. You're a traitor to the United States. All sorts of things, right? And another story, again, I covered all of these things as they were happening right here. Another story was the bounties, right? They claimed that the Russians were paying people in Afghanistan, they were paying the Taliban to kill US soldiers. Now, we know the story is bullshit, but the first red flag is, why would you have to pay someone whose country has been invaded to kill the occupier? That makes no sense. Usually when somebody invades you and you're occupied for 20 years, I don't think you need money to fight the occupier. Money is the last thing on your mind. You just want to get rid of the occupier, right? But so that's the first telltale sign that this is nonsense. And then you had people in the US military who came out and said this is nonsense. But that didn't stop them from publishing the story, right? It was on Rachel Maddow, it was in the New York Times, and this was front page news. And they used this as sort of like something to annoy Trump with, like, oh, Trump knew about this and he didn't do anything. Yeah, he didn't do anything because it's fake. And I'm the last one to defend Trump. I think he is just as establishment as the rest of them. But it goes to show you how, once again, you had a nonsense story. They're blaming Russia for it. And that is actual disinformation because it's a lie. But they are passing it off as the truth. So we are really living in an upside down world at the moment where the people claiming to fight disinformation are actually the biggest spreaders of disinformation. And then when somebody presents them with the truth, they call that disinformation. It's mind-boggling. It's truly mind-boggling. And of course, I mean, don't even get me started on the Iraq War and all of this, because I remember that the anthrax letters and the WMDs. Don't even get me started, please. I want to show you something here because these are some of the comments that have been coming out. They're really something. They're really something. But first, I feel like I should introduce you to the woman in charge. This is Nina Yankovic, and she is the woman who will be heading this disinformation governance board. Are you ready? You're not ready. You are not ready.
Pondering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain. They're laundering disinfo and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice or vote. Oh, information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origin seems slightly less atrocious. Woo.
I'm speechless. I wish I was joking. That's her. I'm not kidding. She is the person that will head this disinformation. So she's going to be deciding what is real and what's not real. Wow, we are in for a ride, aren't we? Like, it wasn't bad enough, right? They had to make it even worse. Look, man, no offense to her personally. She can sing well and everything, but she really doesn't strike me as the right person for this job, especially with the lyrics. You saw the lyrics, right? Wow. She's basically just peddling the same stuff that we've been hearing for the last 4 years. Here, let me give you an example of some of her opinions, right, in the past. So she was posting here that, quote, well, now we can stop calling WikiLeaks, quote unquote, unbiased and start calling them what they've always been, scum. Now, this is really interesting to me because somebody who claims to be fighting disinformation, that's her mandate, right? That's going to be her job. Why would you call WikiLeaks scum when WikiLeaks has 100% credibility on all of their reporting? So I'm not kidding. 100% of all the stories WikiLeaks have published are true. They've never published a fake story or had to do corrections. Actually, don't quote me on the last part. Corrections are normal. But my point is that it's not like the New York Times where you see, oh, this Russian bounties, weapons of mass destruction. That WikiLeaks have never done something like that. On the contrary, everything, the overwhelming majority of what they've said is true. And she's calling them scum. You know why she's calling them scum? Because this is the mantra in the United States among neoliberals that Julian Assange costed costed Hillary Clinton the election because WikiLeaks published her emails. Which is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. But, you know, she's part of that crowd. So you can see very clearly that she has an explicit bias against truth-telling. And then, of course, she says down here, that WikiLeaks is a cog in a much larger operation. She's basically spreading, again, this lie that WikiLeaks works with the Russians, which is, again, this is so childish. It's completely unfounded. It's untrue. And this is something that's been taken out of the Cold War from the 1950s during the Red Scare in the United States. Right? So there have been 2 Red Scares, by the way. The one in the 1950s was the second one. Right now, we're living in the third one. And it's global. And so back then, you could destroy someone's career by saying that they're a Russian spy, right? You're a communist sympathizer. And they would do this to politicians in Washington, D.C. They would do this to actresses and actors in Hollywood. You could destroy them and their reputation by saying these things. Oh, you're working secretly with them. You're a sympathizer, all sorts of things. And that's really what this is. It's really a resurrection of that. And I don't know what to say. I'm really shocked. Here's a tweet from Max Abrams, and he's a professor, right? And he said that it's ironic that the Biden administration is setting up a government unit to counter Russian information warfare at the moment, when it's clear to everyone that Russia is the absolute worst at information warfare. And I have to agree with him. Russia sucks at information warfare compared to the mainstream media. But to be fair, nobody can compete. I mean, the propaganda power, the sheer awesome might that the corporate media in the West wields is unparalleled. Nobody can compete. It's not even fair. It's not even a fair fight. You cannot compete with them. And look what he says underneath. He says, imagine if your neighbors put up Russian flags all over the place instead of Ukrainian ones. That's how good Putin is at information warfare. So I'm sure all of you have seen Ukrainian flags in the street and on people's windows, and landmarks have been lit up with the flags of the Ukrainian color. Have you seen any Russian ones? No. And that's one way of seeing that the Russians are not very effective at so-called disinformation, or let's say influencing people. If they were, you wouldn't be seeing only Ukrainian flags, right? It's a very fair analysis. Now, here's a tweet from Glenn Greenwald about the lovely lady that we just saw. Again, I'm talking, of course, about Miss Nina Yankovic. So Glenn says the resistance cartoon activist whom the Biden administration selected to head its dystopian Homeland Security Disinformation Board, Christ, will provide a valuable service, showing how disinformation is a meaningless term that just means whatever those who wield power want it to mean. So again, this is exactly what we're saying, is that, the dictionary, if you look up disinformation in the dictionary, it's supposed to mean things that are untrue, that are willfully, they are spread on purpose. I'm sorry, but now in, the climate that we're in right now, disinformation just means anything we don't like, right? That's what it means. It means truths that the US government and its allies don't like. That's what it means. Here, another one from Glenn. He says that the Biden administration casually announced today that the Department of Homeland Security, which is a domestic security agency, has created a disinformation board is incredibly dystopian and chilling. The Democrats think this is good and normal tells you all you need to know about them. And I want to make a comment here, because, Glenn is absolutely 100% correct. But something I realized when I saw a lot of these comments, all across the board, right? People on the left, and I'm talking about leftists in the U.S., people that are on the so-called right, meaning Republicans. I hate to use that because Democrats are also on the right, but whatever. They're all criticizing this, but for different reasons. And what I mean by that is, look at this tweet over here from some guy who's running for Congress, right? He says that this is communism. What? What does that even mean? It's not communism. It's you. This is America. I don't like that every time the United States or the West or the UK, they do something really bad, they're like, oh, this is socialism. No, it's us doing that. What do you mean communism? That's happening in America right now. It's really hilarious. It's like a 12-year-old speaking, it's just like no knowledge about anything. It's just typical crap they've heard from their parents that is not anchored in reality, like something out of the 1950s. It's so It's so boring. Just yawn. Seriously. Another one that I've seen is here. This is something a bit better, right? This person says, being somebody who's actually read a trivial amount of history, I can say confidently that the establishment of a state disinformation board is a substantially stronger signal of inbound authoritarianism than something like the riot last year, right? And this person says, I know everything is polarized these days, but I still have a hard time understanding how we can't all agree that the government creating a disinformation governance board led by a person famous for spreading disinformation, cough, cough, is a batshit awful move. Yep, well, I agree with that one. I don't know who this person is, but they make a good point. Now, I want to say something to you guys, because I feel like people are not realizing something. This disinformation entity is being created under what organization? Under the Department of Homeland Security. Now, again, I don't know if you guys are my age, like you're just old enough to remember the Bush years. George W. Bush created the Department of Homeland Security. And the Department of Homeland Security, it has several organizations under it. ICE is one of them, right? And I just find it so funny that even the Republicans who are complaining against this disinformation thing, they're only complaining against that, but not the Department of Homeland Security, which is also itself, it's the same, it comes from the same place. It's this idea that we want to control everything. We want to violate all sorts of constitutional protections. We want to spy on people. That's what it was. That's what the Bush years created. I mean, the NSA mass surveillance, the war on terror, the CIA torture, that's not new, though. And the Department of Homeland Security, that's a remnant from the Bush administration. Although I feel a bit weird saying remnant, because in a way, it's very much alive and well today, right? It's not something old. Every administration since then has kept it. Why didn't Barack Obama repeal it if he's so different? Huh? What about Trump? He's anti-establishment, really? And what about Biden? He keeps it too. And the thing is, if Republicans were in power, and they will be eventually again, they're never going to repeal it. They're not going to repeal the Department of Homeland Security. Now, again, let's be very clear. Like this disinformation thing is batshit. Like there's no question about it. And it's really emblematic of the last couple of years with this Russia hysteria. This Red Scare 3.0. But please pay attention to this, because it shows you once again how there's really no difference between Democrats and Republicans. Like at the end of the day, they're fine with these institutions. They love the banks. They love the corporations. They love spying on people. And they're fine with things like the Department of Homeland Security, right? Which allows for things like this to be created. And just to jog your memory, in case you've forgotten what the Department of Homeland Security is and what it has done in the past, this is just a very simple thing from the ACLU, from their website, about the Department of Homeland Security spying on people, okay? And so once again, they list the components under the DHS that have intelligence missions. So that's the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Coast Guard, Customs and Border Protection, ICE. You remember, again, this is one of those things where people criticized Trump for, rightfully so, for all these ICE raids, but nobody criticizes the DHS that created ICE. Weird. So, and of course the TSA, okay, and they all have intelligence activities and mandates. And so for just as an example, the Customs, Border and Protection, they issued a new policy in July 2008 that lets them search laptops, okay, so they can search, copy, and retain the contents of travelers' electronic devices, such as laptops, cell phones, Blackberries, and external hard drives, without any suspicion of wrongdoing. Any suspicion. These highly intrusive government searches into a traveler's most private information, without any reasonable suspicion, are a threat to the most basic privacy rights guaranteed in the Constitution. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding was that when you're about to enter the United States, so you're technically at the border, right, where they have jurisdiction, you don't have any constitutional rights because it doesn't apply yet. So that's their legal reasoning of how to get around that, right? Then again, The United States loves doing things like this. That's how they torture people at Guantanamo Bay. They create a legal loophole within a legal loophole within a black hole. And then that's how they can justify denying prisoners their habeas corpus and basic rights and torturing them and so on, right? So again, that doesn't make it okay in any stretch of the imagination. But I'm just reminding you what both Democrats and Republicans are fine with. This is one of those things. And of course, there are many, many, many other examples. Just one thing that pops into mind that I remember, they were spying on American Muslims, again, for no reason. And these are huge scandals that erupted during the Bush years and then, of course, also into the Obama years. And my point here, again, is just how basically both Democrats and Republicans are really fine with these things, right? So yes, the disinformation board is Orwellian. There's no question about it. Like, no question. And I'm the first to criticize it. But be careful, because this tweet right here, it has some truth to it, this one. This person says, don't be fooled. Republicans oppose the disinformation board now. But when they control the White House, they will be its strongest proponents. And I really cannot argue with that. You know why? Because I'm old enough to remember the Bush years. And I'm old enough to remember how anybody who was against the Iraq War, they were accused of lying. They were accused of being a terrorist sympathizer, a Saddam apologist, you name it. It's all of this stuff. And so when it's the same mantra, it's like whatever the state says is the truth. Whatever the CIA says, whatever the White House says is reported as fact, as truth by the media, by the press. I've seen that when Republicans were in control, and we're seeing it now when Democrats are in control. So don't be under any illusion. Don't trick yourself. Okay? Because they really aren't that different. These are people who went to school together. They have lunch together. They graduated from the same college. They were in fraternities together and whatever societies. And, you remember Lindsey Graham. I love this video where he's sitting in a limousine and he's like, Joe Biden is one of the greatest people I have ever met. That's really who they are at the end of the day. But yeah, this is some really Orwellian stuff, this disinformation crap. And the fact it's headed by her. Again, she can sing quite well, but the lyrics, I think, in her tweets and the fact that she's been given this mandate, we already know what to expect. Just look at the last years. You already know that anything that's the truth, but an uncomfortable truth to the government will be declared disinformation. And then anything that, anything that is clearly disinformation but is convenient to the establishment, they will declare as truth. It's that in itself is really, truly Orwellian and the current state of affairs, really. I see we've got 1,300 people watching, but only 900 likes. Come on, guys, hit the like button. It helps the channel grow. Speaking of disinformation, you already know how they're censoring people. I really don't need to explain this to you guys. You're very, very smart and educated, and you already know how it is. So thank you for hitting the like button. It helps the channel grow and fight the algorithm. I appreciate it very much. So Karen says, Richard sounds just like Lindsey Graham. During the invitation, I hope. Not now. Yeah, Lindsey Graham is a real character. I really don't like this guy. His policies are horrible, but he's kind of like he's funny. I find him funny, despite his evil deeds, because he's almost like a cartoon character. He's like a true caricature of a colonial type from like the late 19th century, or some villain. Because I've seen him doing all sorts of things. Right? He's sitting, for example, in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he's speaking to Mike Pompeo about sanctions in Syria. And he's like so happy. It's like, is there more coming? Like, he can't wait. Like, it's not enough. The Caesar Act. There's more sanctions, please. Right? And the stealing the oil. This is the funny thing about Republicans. They don't really try to hide who they are. Honestly, that's the only redeeming quality about them, I would say. In policies and everything else, they are no different from Democrats. You're really splitting hairs at this point. Truly. And honestly, the same can be said about the UK. Like, you want to take what I just said right now and substitute Democrats, Republicans with Tories and Labour. 100% just as true. The statement would be just as true. These are people who went to Eton. Eton is a boys' school in England. It's the best one. You have to be stinking rich to go there. Many prime ministers have been there. Boris Johnson, David Cameron. These are people who went to school together. They're friends from high school and from boarding school and from college, and that's how it is. It's a big boys club, really. And of course you have exceptions. Yeah, like a few people like Corbyn maybe, but I mean, again, you're splitting hairs. You're splitting hairs at this point. But she gave me a good laugh. I really, she's really a caricature, this one. She's really something. That's hilarious. In any case, please give me 1 second. I'm just going to read some of your super chats that you sent, and then of course I'll move on to the next subject. Emblem Fate, it's good to see you again. Emblem Fate says the liars who ruined Libya pose and pretend to care about lies. Exactly. That's really what it is. And I'm going to talk about Libya in a bit, actually. Isin says, anyone know what happened to Patrick Lancaster? I can't find anywhere. Just that weird tweet about him being home and done with war. I really don't know. This is news to me as well. So I'll have to check on that and let you guys know. It's very dangerous, right? There are a lot of journalists there who've already been killed. We were talking about Brent Renaud. I think he was one of the first ones to go. Again, I have to admit, I don't know these people. I didn't know their work before that. But, I'm far from... Like, I really hate mainstream media. I really hate corporate media. I think they're propagandists of the highest order and hypocrites of the highest order. But it's still sad when you see, like something like that happen. That's not okay. And I think, again, when we were talking about this the other day, I think that's the difference because, a lot of journalists, reporters in the establishment, they would love nothing more than to see someone like Julian Assange or independent journalists or people that are adversarial, like in prison and killed, right? Like they actually want to see that. And that's the difference between us, that we have some sort of, we have compassion for them at the end of the day. We don't want to see human suffering, no matter who it is. It's a civilian, it's a journalist, like, that doesn't change, and that's the difference between us on a human level. And then, of course, I'm like, that we have compassion for other humans. And then, of course, the work, there's also big differences there. But I hope everybody's okay. Bella, again, thank you for the super chat. And Chevon, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Thank you very much. Just give me 1 second to check over here. Because some of you guys send some things and then I keep you waiting for 2 hours. So I try to read the comments in between. Oh, we got someone who signed up on Patreon. This is Bill. So thank you very much, Bill. I will play a crab dance for you, and then we will continue with the rest of the topic. So let's go.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line, claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome, which is a technical marvel.
والله انت كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro, and then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9. Number 9 large.
we got him.
I told myself, I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Why you texting? Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Hello. Again, thank you to everybody who who's supporting this show. I actually have a few more things to say about this Ministry of Truth. Just give me a second to show you these things. I had a good laugh about some of these tweets. Just a moment to pull this up again. Okay. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, I don't know, for some reason, it's not working for me. Sorry, I apologize. I want to show you one more funny tweet, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. We'll just move on to the next thing. So let's talk about what's happening in Ukraine. Let's talk about what's happening in Ukraine and the title of this video. This is a big one. This is a big one because I'm going to try and break it down into two parts, because I'm sure some of you cannot keep up with how many weapons are being sent to Ukraine. It's really that much. It's really that bad. So I will try and break it down in two chunks. Okay. You guys can see that, okay? There's a video playing, but there's no audio, so don't worry. I'm not going to play that just yet. So if you can see that, okay, we'll take a dive into this, all right? So I'm sure many of you have lost count how many billions of dollars worth of weapons the U.S. has sent to Ukraine, and I don't blame you. It's quite hard to keep up. Right now, what's being proposed by the Biden administration are two things, right? So number one is $33 billion. You heard that correctly. 20 billion of that 33 would be for weapons. Okay? The other chunk is going to go to some amusing things. I'll show you in a second. And the other idea being proposed, and it's already passed just a few hours ago, this is the Lend Lease. Now, for those of you who know your World War II history, that might sound very familiar, and that's exactly what it alludes to. So basically what happened in World War II in 1941, this is before the U.S. enters the war after Pearl Harbor. You know, the United States at that time didn't want to get involved in the war. What they did is they came up with the Lend Lease, which was an idea that the United States will, as the name implies, lend and or lease tanks, guns, ships, you name it, to the Allies who are fighting the Nazis to help them win the war. And of course, that means that, you know, as the name implies, you're borrowing these things and you're leasing them. So you have to pay for this afterwards, okay? The idea is that it just makes everything much easier, because if you would to sell the weapons, right, this takes time. You have to negotiate things and so on. And given the urgency of the matter of fighting the Nazis, it was too urgent, and the United States decided to go through with that. And many people regard that as one of the reasons that the Allies were so successful. Like, this is one of the areas of contribution that the United States certainly helped the Allies with. It's true, right? It certainly did help and make a difference to defeat fascism in Europe. And so that's what they're alluding to right now. You know, they're trying to compare the war in Ukraine to what's happening in World War II. They tell you this is the biggest war in Europe since World War II. You know, they say it's the biggest refugee crisis since World War II. And, you know, Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, he's literally Adolf Hitler. I mean, again, like, not to minimize what's happening in Ukraine, but these comparisons are a bit, they're wrong. I'm sorry, they're just flat out ridiculous. If you've noticed, every time the United States has an enemy, whether it's Saddam Hussein or Bin Laden, they're always Hitler. Everybody the United States hates is Hitler. In any case, let me walk you through what's going on here, because this is very important to understand. So here is the legislation itself for the Lend Lease. Okay, it's called the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend Lease Act of 2022. And this is basically, it's a done deal. It's a done deal. So now it's going to President Biden's desk, and he will sign off on it. It's already passed the Senate and the House. It's good to go. And this will basically, let me read you the text here very briefly. This bill temporarily waives certain requirements related to the president's authority to lend or lease defense articles if the defense articles are intended for Ukraine's government or the governments of other Eastern European countries affected by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. For fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023, an agreement to lend or lease defense articles under this bill shall not be subject to certain requirements and provisions that typically apply to such lend-lease agreements, including a requirement that generally prohibits a loan or lease period from exceeding 5 years. The president must establish expedited procedures to ensure the timely delivery of defense articles loaned or leased to Ukraine under this bill. So basically, in other words, this is just getting rid of a lot of bureaucracy and red tape. And if you've been paying attention, there was a CNN headline the other day that the United States doesn't know who it's sending weapons to in Ukraine, right? This is from 19th of April, and the headline from CNN says, what happens to weapons sent to Ukraine? The United States doesn't really know. So, of course, many of these weapons are falling into the hands of neo-Nazis. Or you could just really say Nazis, because they're a continuation of the Nazism you had in Ukraine, which collaborated with the Nazis in the Holocaust, in World War II. So this is really reckless, because, I know what happened in Syria. I know what happened in Iraq. A lot of this American equipment that was meant for the Iraqis ended up in the hands of ISIS. And then the UK and the US, they claimed they were giving non-lethal aid to these so-called moderate rebels who turn out to be really fanatics. And they lied. They lied about a lot of this stuff. And all the weapons either purposely or accidentally keep winding up in the hands of Al-Qaeda, of ISIS. And of course, they left Taliban, the Americans left Afghanistan last year, and now the Taliban has a lot of the equipment that they left over. Although I think that's a slightly different situation. But nevertheless, I just want to make the point here that this idea of sending unfettered amounts of weapons to a war zone by the Americans has a very, very recent and long history of always ending up in the hands of the people that they're supposed to be fighting, or the people that are, the last ones you want to get their hands on these things. And so the Azov battalion, just as one example, we saw them using even Israeli weapons. How does that add up? You have a Nazi, a neo-Nazi battalion using weapons from the so-called, only Jewish state on earth. It's crazy, but that's what's happening. And we have video evidence, and we've looked through all of this. And now they want to send unlimited amounts of weapons, basically, right? And if you oppose this, what do you call somebody who opposes sending weapons to Ukraine? And I mean, of course, in unrestricted amounts. Well, you call them a Putin puppet, of course. What else? They're Kremlin agents. So just look at this. Just look at this headline over here. Again, this is so absurd. This is from MSNBC, and they say that the GOP, so that's the Republican Party, right? The GOP's Putin wing balks at supplying weapons to Ukraine on loan. So they are talking basically about a couple of Congress members from the Republican Party, because 10 of them voted against it, right? And they are now apparently Putin allies, or as they're saying, the Putin wing. Again, this is really the kind of toxic environment that we're in right now, where anybody who expresses any sort of, opposition is immediately deemed a Kremlin asset or a Putin puppet and so on. You get the idea. Now, here is the vote that took place. You can see this is just a few hours ago, and this is the final tally. So you can see among Democrats, every single Democrat voted in favor of the Lend Lease, 221. And among the Republicans, 196 in favor and 10 against. And so apparently these 10 guys are the Putin wing, according to MSNBC. And that's the final tally. Now, of course, if every single Democrat voted for this thing, what does that mean? What does that mean, guys? Who's in the Democratic Party? Here we go. Ayanna Pressley, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Richie Torres. Do you get the picture? Funny that, right? The squad always seem to be voting on the side of the establishment. Amazing. Amazing. What a coincidence. But they're totally anti-establishment, I promise you. and I really, before I get back to them, I just want to go quickly to this MSNBC thing, just to show you how utterly obscene this is. Look how crazy the Russophobia has become. Look what they describe the Lend Lease as here, okay? They say the year before the U.S. entered World War II, Franklin Roosevelt proposed something called the Lend Lease Act of 1941. The goal was relatively straightforward. In order to assist our British allies, American policymakers created a law that allowed the White House to lease or lend military supplies to any government whose defense the president deems vital to the defense of the United States. Do you see what they said here? Our British allies. So they're making it sound like during World War II, the United States only gave weapons to the British under the Lend Lease Act. Do you know how insane this is? They are leaving out that the Russians also got weapons from the United States through the Lend Lease Act. As a matter of fact, they were the number two recipient after the UK. But because you're not allowed to say anything remotely good about Russia, even that they defeated the fucking Nazis in World War II and were working with the Americans, they've left it out. This is insane. This is insane. This is really something else. Our British allies. No, it wasn't to assist our British allies. It was the British and the Soviets and everybody else fighting the fucking Nazis. What a lie. This is ridiculous. And it's not the only article. I'm not kidding. I've seen this also. Let me pull this up over here. This was, I think, in the Associated Press. I saw the other one where they were saying it's for hold on, please. This is really something. Hold on. Here it is. Associated Press. They talk about Franklin Roosevelt, okay? And at the time, the U.S. president ushered the Lend Lease Act through Congress, responding to British Prime Minister Winston Churchill's appeal for aid. Yeah, what about the Russians? Man, this is so dishonest because they are basically trying to rewrite history implicitly, right? You cannot deny this is what's going on because there are many outlets that are writing it this way. They are trying to omit the fact that the Russians they were the number two recipient of weapons under the Lend Lease Act from the United States. And again, the Russians suffered more casualties than anyone in World War II, more than the Americans, more than the British, both soldiers and civilians. They lost 26 million people. And the Russians also did more in terms of numbers, right? The Soviet Union inflicted 80% of all German casualties. 80%. Now, of course, you can say, well, it was American industry and British intelligence and Russian numbers that defeated the Nazis. Yes, it's a combination of all. But like they're acting like the Russians were some kind of like side player that have nothing to do with this. This is really, I was shocked when I read this because in my mind, when I hear Lend Lease, I always remember British and Russians. The British and Soviets got weapons from the US. That's what it is. And they just leave this out everywhere. Unbelievable. Really unbelievable. Now, just going back to who's voted. You know what's coming. You know what's coming. Here's Ilhan Omar voting in favor of the Lend Lease. And again, there are people who are going to defend this because there are always people who are, ready to kiss their butts and defend anything they do. But I'm just a bit confused because last year in July, July 2021, Ilhan Omar voted to give Israel $3.8 billion in weapons. And this is a woman who claims to support Palestinians. And now she is giving, who knows how many, I mean, this is, again, it's indefinite, right? So now she's voting to give weapons to Ukraine, where we know for a fact that these weapons are falling into the hands of Nazis like the Azov battalion. So please explain to me how Ilhan Omar, who claims to oppose Israel and claims to oppose white supremacy, votes in the span of less than a year, she votes to give Israel billions of dollars worth of weapons and potentially Nazis billions of dollars worth of weapons. Can you please explain that to me? How this is not standard establishment behavior? How can you cannot distinguish her from Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi or any, Democrat, establishment Democrat based on her votes. They're indistinguishable. Do you understand that? If I took away her name and just showed you her voting record, you wouldn't know who that is because she's just like any other Democrat. Right? And of course, there are people going to say, yeah, but sometimes and sometimes. I don't give a fuck. I'm talking about sending weapons. She's sending weapons now to Ukraine, and she sent weapons last year to Israel. And this is very important because this one to Ukraine passed overwhelmingly. So you could say that, she didn't even need to vote yes. She could have voted no, right? Out of principle that she's scared the weapons might fall into the hands of Nazis, which is a very reasonable fear. You know why? Because the United States itself passed legislation explicitly banning the sale of weapons to the Azov battalion. So they know that this is a risk. It's a very real risk to the point that the US government has a ban on sending them weapons. And yet they know that they keep falling into their hands. The other thing, last year, when they were voting to send Israel money, that vote barely passed. It passed by 217. Okay? I posted about it at the time. This is what happened. Again, this is to give Israel $3.8 billion. Okay? It barely passed by 217 votes, and Ilhan Omar votes for it. And Bowman, and Lee, and Ayanna Pressley, and Jayapal. So all of these so-called progressives who like to blab, and they have nothing but hot air coming out of their mouths. Oh, we support Palestinians, and no. They keep giving weapons to the Israelis who are killing the Palestinians and occupying them. Weird, right? Weird how that works. Interesting. So you support Palestinians just with lip service, but when it comes to oppressing them, you provide the fucking money to do that. What, I mean, who needs enemies with friends like you? Why do the Palestinians need enemies with friends like these? You call giving Israel money supporting Palestinians? What fucking universe do you come from where that makes sense? How does this make sense? It doesn't. It only makes sense when you understand that these people are fucking frauds and they are working with the establishment. Either, it could be they're pressured, who knows? But the result is the same for a Palestinian, for the Syrian Golan Heights. It's the same. It's the exact same for Iran, all of these countries that are attacked by Israel, Lebanon. The result is the same. You are contributing and continuing the same situation. And again, it only passed because she and her friends voted for it. It barely passed, 217 votes. So never forget that. I want to highlight this point because people think that she deserves some sort of credit. Credit for what? Credit for what? Now, the other thing that we have to deal with here is, of course, the $33 billion. That's, again, another thing. You cannot even count how much money they're giving the Ukrainians. But before we move on to that, I just want to play you a tiny clip from CNN. They brought a historian on. He's a professor of history at Columbia University. And same thing. And he came to talk about the Lend Lease. And pay attention to this sentence that he says, okay?
Used Lend Lease. It was part of the casus belli, ultimately, that justified in Hitler's mind the decision to enter into war with the United States. In the broader picture of World War II, that, of course, in some sense was a godsend. But that would definitely not be, I think, our interpretation of the current moment. We are certainly treading a very fine line here. And
let me play that again, okay? Let me play that again.
Spectacular public defeat of Russia or the Soviet Union was really the goal. In Afghanistan, where we bled the Soviets dry, it was done much more discreetly. In this case, it's really a very direct engagement. And what we do know from history is that a regime that is prone to paranoia, prone to conspiracy theories like the Nazi regime was, used Lend Lease. It was part of the casus belli, ultimately, that justified in Hitler's mind the decision to enter into war with the United States. In the broader picture of world...
So do you understand what he's saying? Everybody keeps comparing Putin to Hitler, right? Okay, fine. Let's give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say you're right. Like he's a carbon copy of Hitler. This historian is telling you that the Lend Lease is what the Germans used to justify entering into war with the United States. Now, obviously, that's not the only reason, but he is telling you himself that, oh, this regime that's prone to paranoia, and also saying, like, you're going to piss them off. Do you understand what he's saying? My question here is, when Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, just a few days ago, is saying that the danger of nuclear war is very real. Do you really think this is the right time to be doing things like this? Again, like, how far are you going to test the waters before it starts blowing up in our faces? At what point do you think the Russians are going to look at this and say, you know what? This is unacceptable. They've crossed the red line. And then it becomes a nuclear war. It's so easy. It's really much easier than people think to get to that point. And everybody seems to think that this is okay. This is fine. I've seen the most absurd headlines. Like, I'm not kidding. Things that you would not believe. Like, yeah, the United States should try winning a nuclear war. Like, as if it's like a football match or some kind of extreme sport that you should try. They are disconnected from reality. They are really disconnected from reality. And this historian himself is telling you that, fine, you want to say Putin's like Hitler. Well, you risk angering him. And in this day and age, so in 2022, that could mean nuclear war. Back then is different. Now, going to the $33 billion, here is Joe Biden. Well, I'll play you Zelensky first. Take a look at the Ukrainian President Zelensky, what he has to say.
Українці, українки, усі наші захисники і захисниці. Сьогодні маємо серйозні новини для нашої держави, для нашого захисту. По-перше, Сполучені Штати Америки підготували новий пакет підтримки для України на 33 мільярди доларів. Зокрема, більше 20 можуть піти на оборону, ще більше 8 мільярдів доларів заплановані на економічну підтримку, ще 3 мільярди доларів будуть направлені на гуманітарну допомогу. Це дуже важливий крок Сполучених Штатів. І я вдячний за нього американському народу і особисто президенту Байдену. Сподіваюсь, Конгрес швидко підтримує цей запит на допомогу нашій державі. Президент Байден цілком справедливо сказав сьогодні, що цей крок не дешевий, але негативні наслідки для усього світу від російської агресії проти України та проти демократії настільки масштабні, що у порівнянні з ними ця підтримка Сполучених Штатів є необхідною. Разом ми точно можемо зупинити російську агресію і надійно захистити свободу в Європі.
Right, so you get the idea. He's very happy about this. There's no question. And I want to show you very briefly the sheet from the White House, the fact sheet, and what they say they're going to supply them with. And of course, like we said, 33 billion, 20 billion is for military assistance, so for weapons, essentially. And here's some of the other resources they're going to give this. Are you ready? So down here, that they are going to counter Russian disinformation and propaganda narratives, promote accountability for Russian human rights violation, and support activists, journalists, and independent media to defend freedom of expression. That's lovely. I love that, right? You know, the United States is really a bastion of independent media, right? CNN, Fox News. What could we do without them? We'd be we'd be in dire straits without them, right? Independent media, just to translate what this says, is basically anybody who is pushing a pro-NATO narrative. And nothing's, there's nothing more independent than being funded by the US government, right? That's really great. That's really great. So in any case, this is from Kim.com. Look what he says. He says, Joe Biden wants another 33 billion on top of the billions already spent on the US proxy war in Ukraine. No end in sight. He says it's not to attack Russia, but to defend Ukraine. Well, how can you do one without the other? Exactly. And this well, it's not a meme. It's a very important historical photograph from an anti-war protest. But it echoes the sentiment quite succinctly. And what's funny to me is that regarding this issue, it's kind of like what I was just talking about with the Department of Homeland Security. When you have like a disagreement between Democrats and Republicans, it's not really about the substance. It's more sort of a facade. It's a show, and they kind of disagree on the wrong things and agree on the wrong things. Look at Donald Trump Jr., what he's saying. He's saying Biden is asking for $33 billion to send to Ukraine, on top of the billions already sent to the very corrupt nation. Well, I would say it's a corrupt government, not nation. But in any case, he says, but they couldn't spend a tiny fraction of that, here we go, to finish the wall, secure our border, and end the humanitarian crisis and drug sex trafficking at our border. It sounded so right, and then he just can't get over the finish line, right? It starts out good, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So they disagree on sending the money to Ukraine, but they both agree, Democrats and Republicans, on not spending it on healthcare, on not spending it on university, on not spending it on things that would benefit Americans, whether it's rebuilding infrastructure, universal pre-K, name whatever you want. And this is kind of emblematic of what I'm talking about when we say, Democrats, Republicans are really the same. They are really the same, or at least the result is very much the same. And, again, this is a coincidence because I was looking up things about Ukraine, and then I stumbled on this random video that somebody posted, and honestly, this is shocking. This is really shocking. Look at this video. So this is the United States. I mean, this looks like, in a post-apocalypse world. That's what it looks like. It's apocalyptic in a way. And you see how poor all of these people are. They're living in the trash. I mean, my point here is that the U.S. government wants to send so much money. It's not just like once or twice or no. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. 800 million here, another 800 million. Let's go 3 billion, 33 billion, and they got nothing to spend on helping their own citizens. And this again, it tells you how the U.S. government. When I say U.S. government, I'm really saying Wall Street, the weapons manufacturers, the people who run the government. It's one and the same. You see, once again, how they not only create poverty and destruction and misery in other countries with the sanctions and the war, they even do it at home. Because at the end of the day, when they're lining their friends' pockets at Raytheon or Wall Street with these billions of dollars, they're screwing their own citizens, right? It comes at the expense of their own citizens. And, when they say, oh, we're going to send weapons to Ukraine, what they're really doing is they're sending boatloads of cash to their friends and then weapons to Ukraine. Do you understand? That's how it works. They're making money from this. There's no question about it. Anybody who tells you otherwise is a liar, is an absolute liar. There is nothing like a good war for the weapons, for the arms peddlers, right? And you'll always have bipartisan support on that. I mean, the fact that 10 Republicans voted against it, again, this is trivial. It's trivial. It's a joke. It doesn't mean anything. The fact that the overwhelming majority voted for it, that's more important. And again, this is the difference between how we in independent media cover things and how mainstream media cover things. Because for them, when 10 Republicans vote not to send weapons to Ukraine and to, line the pockets of the arms dealers, their takeaway at MSNBC is that these 10 Republicans are the Putin wing. While our takeaway is that the overwhelming majority of both Democrats and Republicans want to prolong the war in Ukraine, and they are sacrificing the lives of Ukrainians, using Ukraine as a pawn to prod the Russian bear and make as much money as possible. Because when you are interested in a diplomatic settlement, you could have avoided this war a long time ago, right? many of the things that Russia's complaining about, they've been complaining about them before anyone even heard about Vladimir Putin. No one knew who the fuck Vladimir Putin was when Russia was saying, you need to back off with these bases and get away. You don't expand with NATO past Germany. Okay? And then, of course, when you want a diplomatic settlement, you make meaningful concessions, you talk, you engage in dialogue. You don't send billions and billions and billions of dollars to fuel the war, adding fuel to the fire. But that's exactly what they're doing. And that's what the mainstream media will never fucking tell you, because they work for the arms dealers. They're the fucking mouthpiece of the Pentagon. Do you understand? And that's why they give you this garbage, this trash, which I wouldn't wipe my ass with. Putin's wing. Grow up, you fucking children. So this is what's happening. And I want to show you a clip from Biden that someone posted on Twitter. Look what he says here. Okay, when he's talking about these 33 billion.
It's going to allow pensions and social support to be paid to the Ukrainian people so they have something in their pocket. It's going to allow pensions and social support to be paid to the Ukrainian people.
Wonderful. Where's the social support for your own citizens? They're really devious in a way. Yeah, they're really devious. How they're so ready to open their wallets, so to speak, and sympathize with others. They don't really sympathize with them. Again, if they actually cared about Ukrainians, they wouldn't be using them to annoy the Russians and start wars, right? But basically, just in lip service, where's this compassion for your own citizens? Where is it? Nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. And it's really it's disgusting. I also wanted to show you another piece of information, because this is quite interesting. Let's take a look over here at this Lend Lease bill, okay? Because from what I'm seeing, if you go on the Senate's website, again, this is the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend Lease Act, okay? That's the official name. And today, it passed. But let's look at the actions, what happened. The date that it was introduced in the Senate is the 19th of January. What? Hold on a second. How does that make sense? The war in Ukraine started February 24th, right? And yet, over a month before that, they're getting ready for this Lend Lease. It's a bit odd, right? And then, of course, you'll have people say, yeah, but that's because the Russians were amassing troops at the border and so on. Hold on a second, man. This is very extreme. Again, the only time this has been used before is to fight the Nazis in World War II. Do you understand? So you're telling me that the Americans, instead of making sure that there's a diplomatic solution before the war, right? Like you're telling me that they're so sure, the Americans were so sure that Russia's going to invade that the only thing they could do is send weapons. No, that's not true. Why not a diplomatic solution? Like, if you're ready to do a Lend Lease Act that hasn't been seen since World War II, a month before the war, why not put that same kind of effort into diplomacy? Huh? Where is it? There was nothing of this caliber. I mean, just look at the amount of money and the amount of PR and just the whole mobilization from the EU, the US. Did you see anything of that scale diplomatically to avoid the war right now, to stop the war? Be honest with yourself. Do you see anything of that size? It doesn't exist, because they're not interested in it. They're not interested in it. And go ahead. You want to blame the Russians? Go ahead and blame the Russians. Fine. But that doesn't change what I'm saying. Even if the Russians are 100% guilty of every single thing they're saying, where is the diplomatic effort to stop this in advance, to stop this now? It doesn't exist. They're only interested in making money and continuing the war and prolonging it as much as possible. And that is the truth. And they're no different from each other. And that's why both Democrats and Republicans pushed for this, because their friends, the people they work for, are going to make money. They don't work for the American people. They don't work for towards peace. They work for corporations and banks, and that is the real takeaway. We've got 1,500 people watching. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Please make sure you've hit the like button. It looks like most of you have, so I'm happy. Again, let me read some of your super chats, and then of course we'll continue. I have more things to cover. Give me 1 second, please. It's loading, and Thank you, Dak Med, for the super chats. Some of them are not in. I think they're in Cyrillic, so I'll try and read them. Claudia's been very kind to not just help with the channel and the chat, but also to translate the text for me. So I think this one is the first one that this is the second one that Dark Med said. They said Pravde Vsia Sila. Is that correct? Claudia tells me it means all power is in the truth. Is that correct? That's very good, and I appreciate it very much. Dark Med also says, people wake up. You've been enslaved by social media. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm broke. But if one of you, I help. Well, I don't know if anything is going to change with Elon Musk. I think a lot of people are they are too optimistic. It's okay to be cautiously optimistic, right? But I wouldn't put all my faith in there. But I appreciate the donations, Dark Med. And Macaria says, Richard, the U.S. told Russia demands for Ukrainian neutrality were a non-starter in December. Yes, they knew it was coming and had no intention of stopping this. 100% correct, right? This is something that we were talking about, how the Russians made a list of demands before the war. They said this in December, as you correctly pointed out. And some of the main points were neutrality, that Ukraine remains neutral. It doesn't join NATO. The other thing was that, Russia has 5 NATO countries already surrounding it, right? And their demand was that Poland, for example, you don't put, let's say, American troops in Poland. You understand? Like, they're not saying, okay, get all of these countries in NATO away from our borders. It can't be changed anymore. But they were saying that you don't put foreign troops, meaning other NATO troops from other NATO countries, at our border. So this is one of the other demands. And of course, they said the exact term that we were talking about, a non-starter, which is a nice way of saying, go screw yourself. That's what they told the Russians. It's very unfortunate, this whole situation. Thank you very much to Happy Zorro for the super chat. And Dakmet says, dude, if half the people had half the brain like you, the world would be paradise. I don't know about that, but I'm humbled by the comment. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys are here. So let's see with the there's another super chat from Super Mario. It's good to see you, Super Mario. Thank you. I'm getting the next topics for you ready. Just give me one moment. It's this whole Ukraine thing is really the ripple effect is frankly something else. Really something else. All these consequences globally, it's astonishing. And we were speaking about NATO, and you guys just reminded me of a story that I saw. And here I didn't have time to go through it last time, so we can do it now. Okay. You guys remember that Finland and Sweden have expressed the will to join NATO, right? Now, again, this doesn't mean that they have 100% committed to this, but they have began this dialogue and this discussion. I wanted to show you this headline from Reuters. It says here that the Swedish Prime Minister rejects referendum on possible NATO membership. So they're saying here that, hold on, I'll read this to you. They're saying here that Sweden's government does not plan to hold a referendum if its parliament decides to proceed with an application for NATO membership, Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson said on Friday. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has forced both Sweden and Finland to review long-held beliefs that military neutrality is the best means of ensuring national security, with both countries expected to make a decision in the next few weeks. So Andersson said that a referendum was a bad idea, and then she said, I don't think it is an issue that is suitable for a referendum. There is a lot of information about national security that is confidential, so there are important issues in such a referendum that cannot be discussed and important facts that cannot be put on the table. Sweden's parliament is reviewing security policy with a report expected in mid-May. Separately, Anderson's own party, the Social Democrats, are looking at whether to drop their objections to NATO membership, of course. With a majority in parliament backing membership, the ruling Social Democrats are seen as the biggest hurdle to Sweden applying to join the 30-nation alliance. Again, just as a side note, the whole point of NATO was to fight the Soviet Union, right? After the Soviet Union ceased to exist, NATO not only still exists, but doubled its membership. Food for thought. Make up your own mind about that. So the leader of the moderates, the biggest opposition party, has also rejected calls for a referendum on this issue. Quote, voters are not naive about Russia, Kristersson told Daily Aftonbladet earlier this week in a debate with left party Dagestar. It's very clear that Swedish voters have understood what happened on February 24th and have drawn their conclusions. Dagestar, whose party opposes NATO membership, told Aftonbladet that Swedes should get a say in the decision. He says that this has to go, she says that this has to go back to the voters. There has to be very strong democratic support in this question. And Sweden holds a general election also on top of that in September. And this is an important thing. They say that an opinion poll by Demoskop in Daily Aftonbladet published on April 20th showed that 57% of Swedes are in favor of joining NATO, which is up from 51% in March. So we looked at those polls the other day, both in Sweden and in Finland. And yes, the polls seem to indicate that more people are in favor of joining NATO since the war in Ukraine began. Now, I'm curious to hear what your opinion is on this, but I think this is funny. I think this is funny in a sense because, these countries, again, they claim that they're so democratic and they're so civilized and they are true representatives of the people in government. And yet, when there's a crucial issue like this, when Russia's saying things like this whole war in Ukraine, one of the big reasons, the big catalysts is NATO expansionism. And you cannot forget that Finland and Sweden are in Russia's backyard. I mean, if they were to join NATO, Russia would have another NATO country on its border, right? And then on top of that, Sweden. So this is basically telling people in Sweden that the government wants to do something that could really piss off the Russians and result in them putting nukes on the border nearby. And then they're telling them, we're not going to let you have a say in it. We're going to decide this, us bunch of bureaucrats. Wow. Okay. Again, man, I just think that this is really an indication that quite literally, it's not people in Sweden deciding this. It's the governments. And I don't need to tell you that the Swedish government is like this with the UK and the US, and even if they're not officially in NATO, they certainly take some orders. If you know the Julian Assange case, they take orders from elsewhere. So I think this is part of a strategy to basically annoy the Russians. And when I say annoy, I think that's putting it mildly, because this kind of, let's prod the bear. I really do these people have brains? Do they not understand that you could risk a nuclear war with this strategy? Lend Lease to Ukraine, sending heavy weapons now from Germany. Again, the Gepard is not exactly the newest, but nevertheless. And then Sweden and Finland joining NATO. I don't know what they're expecting from this. The Russians, if you listen to their logic, they are saying that this is existential, right? And it's not just the thing, that's Putin, what Putin said and Lavrov said. Even Lloyd Austin, the US Defense Secretary, is saying that the goal is to weaken Russia. So this tells us this is not about Ukraine. This is about a proxy war between NATO and Russia through Ukraine. And Ukraine is being used as that vehicle to wage this war, which is, of course, very disrespectful to say the least. It's insulting. It's revolting that they're using the Ukrainians like this as a pawn. But keep in mind, again, when they talk about, it's a defensive alliance, I'm sorry, it's Syria and Libya would beg to differ. Yugoslavia would beg to differ about your definition of defensive. And when you have sentences, things coming out of the horse's mouth from Lloyd Austin, that this is about weakening Russia, that really tells you everything you need to know. This unrestricted pouring of weapons $33 billion, $20 billion of that is weapons. And now the Lend Lease, this is really about making money. It's about prolonging the war, not ending it. And I'm afraid that they're going to do one too many moves, one too many greedy moves, one too many stupid moves. And then you could very easily end up in a situation where there's a nuclear confrontation. And then for lack of a better term, that's apocalyptic. It's truly apocalyptic. Even during the Cold War, just to stress this, even during the Cold War, you didn't have someone like the U.S. Defense Secretary saying we want to weaken Russia. This is outrageous. You didn't have the U.S. president saying like, oh yeah, the Russian leader's a war criminal. What? Even in the fucking Cold War, they would not say these things. Do you understand that? They would actually sit down and speak. And that's what me and Pepe were talking about just the other day. That the whole strategy's changed. Like these people that are running the US government, the UK government, NATO, the EU, they don't understand the balance of power. They do not understand old school diplomacy. They are really just reckless. They are idiots. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're going to take us all down with them. By the way, I wasn't planning on covering that. I wanted to do it another time, but you guys reminded me, so we touched on it. But there's more stuff about Ukraine, and we're going to talk about the gas. Man, I'm kind of angry because I spoke about the gas as it was breaking, and then I didn't get to comment on all the reactions and the headlines. So I'll do that in a second. Just one thing, okay? Let me just read over here. What's happening? We've got this is lovely. Thank you to Jonathan, and thank you to Anna. Thank you both for signing up to support my work on Patreon. I will play a crab dance for you and get something to drink very quickly, and then we will continue tout de suite. Let's go.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line. Claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch out.
Thank you for Iron Dome, which is a technical marvel.
والله انتوا كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro, and then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s. Number 9 large.
we got him.
I told myself, I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Why you take this? Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Hey, there we go. I really appreciate your support, guys. Thank you again for I'm glad you enjoy my work and you find the segments and the live streams informative, and I very much appreciate your support. Even if you just hit the like button, it's a form of support, and I'm grateful. So please just give me a second. Okay. Let's move on to the next topic. I actually wanted to say one more thing, which I forgot just a second ago when I was talking about this rhetoric that's coming out of the U.S. I mean, Biden, you remember he said that the goal is regime change, right? That's another big one. Calling Putin a war criminal, that's already something that's different and quite an escalation. But he basically said that the goal is regime change, right? So that's 2 occasions where you have the biggest, the top U.S. officials, the president, the defense secretary, expressing a will to oust the Russian president and weaken Russia. So when the Russians, like, they say this is existential, okay, fine, you could argue, well, that's just them saying that. It's just propaganda. But when the US is saying that, is it really propaganda now? Is it really just a one-sided thing when it's coming out of the horse's mouth? I don't know. I'm starting to believe otherwise, you know? I mean, I would start to believe otherwise if that was your starting point from which you departed. I've lost my bloody pen. Anyway, I'll live. So let's continue, guys. I want to talk about the gas, right? And we can get rid of this one. Okay. Right. This, what do they say in the US? It's a doozy. This is a doozy, as they say. I'm gonna try my best again to break everything down in a succinct, summarized, brief, concise, eloquent manner, so that you depart from this live stream feeling invigorated and more informed about the current affairs. So, the gas situation, what's happening? As you guys know, Poland and Bulgaria, they refused to pay Russia for gas in rubles, okay? And as a result, Russia said no more gas. So on March 31st, that was the deadline when Russia imposed this new rule that all unfriendly countries, which includes most of the EU, have to start paying for gas in rubles. And this is huge because the European Union typically, they pay between 200 to 800 million euros a day for Russian gas. 40% of Europe's gas comes from Russia. So this is significant. And this is one of the techniques the Russians have been trying to use to shore up the value of the ruble, which went down after the slew of sanctions that they imposed on Russia. So I was reporting on this live with you as the story broke when Poland and Bulgaria, their gas was cut. The Russians saying, that's it. You don't pay, no gas. And I didn't get a chance to comment on these headlines because they hadn't come out yet, but I wanted to go back and revisit them and give you also the other developments now of who has decided to pay for Russian gas in rubles. But just look at these headlines. I mean, I'm really stunned. This is from The Guardian, and they say Russia accused of blackmail after gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria halted. This is from the Chicago Tribune. They say Russia cuts natural gas to NATO members, Poland and Bulgaria, escalating standoff with the West. PBS, they say European nations accuse Russia of blackmail. This is from ABC. Russia cuts off gas to two nations in bid to divide West. Wow. Very strong language, right? Here, I posted these on Twitter. The BBC said, Russia trying to divide allies using gas. And then the Associated Press says Russia cuts off gas to two NATO nations in bid to divide West. And of course, they also said in another headline that Russia is taking aim at Europe's economy. I mean, this is big, right? Do you notice how not in one of those headlines do they mention that Poland and Bulgaria don't want to pay for gas? Like, do they think gas is free? Again, you don't have to agree with the Russians in any way, but there's a transaction going on here, right? There's the idea that you send rubles in payment in rubles and you get gas. And Poland and Bulgaria are saying we're not sending any payments. And they're basically expecting the Russians to just give the gas for free. They don't mention that anywhere. So if you have no clue what's happening about any of this situation, you would just see the headline, and like most people, you don't read to the bottom of the article. You might not even read the article. And then you're just left with this impression that Russia's just like cutting off gas, it's shutting off the valves just to like screw with Europe's economy and be evil. Because this is the whole mantra, right? Russia is simultaneously extremely stupid and extremely evil, like every Western enemy, right? From Saddam to Bashar al-Assad, you name it. They're both so evil and so dumb. And this feeds that whole narrative that Russia just wants to screw with Europe. So the fact that they don't mention that these countries, of their own accord, do not want to pay in rubles, it's not there. This is called lying by omission, by omitting, leaving out information. And so even the European Union, they're confusing, because a few days ago they put out a document, I'll just show it to you in a second, where they were saying that if you pay for the gas in rubles, it's technically not a breach of contract. It's a breach of sanctions, sorry. Because remember, the EU have sanctioned Russian industry and so on. Everything except gas, basically, except the gas and energy industry, because they rely on gas. And the EU, in their advisory, they were saying, yeah, maybe you can still go forward and pay the Russians for the gas without breaching the sanctions. And now they're saying, oh no, it's blackmail. So this is very interesting. And just to be clear, 100%, I made a video on this channel explaining every step of how this plan works, how Russia wants to get paid in rubles. And it doesn't sound like you would think. Russia is not asking European countries to go and buy rubles themselves and then send them to the Russians. They are asking the buyers of the gas, so let's say Germany, to go to Gazprom Bank, which is a Russian state-owned bank, and open a ruble account, okay? Germany would send the same payment as usual in euros, not rubles, and then Gazprom Bank takes those euros, sells them for rubles, and takes the rubles and puts them in this second account that Germany opened. And from that account, it pays for the gas. So at the end of the day, the European countries or the unfriendly countries are still paying in dollars and euros. And it's Gazprom Bank that will sell those euros and dollars for rubles and then make the payment for them in their name. So it's kind of a win-win for both sides, really, because the buyers can still send the same currency. They just have to go make a second account in their name. And Gazprom Bank will take care of all the conversion and then the payment. And it's done in their name. So that, it's like Germany's going and buying the rubles, essentially, and driving up the value of the ruble. And of course, we looked at it just yesterday. It was 70 rubles to the dollar. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's even better than before the war started. Now, Poland, I explained again in a separate video with Poland and Bulgaria why they have stopped. Poland was planning on stopping this anyway. Poland doesn't want to depend on Russia. It depends currently about 50% of national consumption is Russian gas. And basically, Poland had plans to cut this anyway by the end of the year because their long-term contract with Gazprom, which is the Russian state-owned gas company, it finishes at the end of the year anyway. And they have a new pipeline that opens today on May 1st, where they can start getting gas from Lithuania. I went through the whole list, every single source. They have an LNG terminal. There's another pipeline that will be opening in October. There's also, they're using reverse gas from Germany through the Yamal pipeline and so on. I went into detail on that one. So my point is Poland can afford to do this in a sense because they have very high reserves, between 70 to 80% of their gas reserves. They have other pipelines, other alternatives. But I mean, Bulgaria, man, 90% of their gas comes from Russia. And there are other countries that have realized if we cut Russian gas, we are screwed. We are screwed. The EU economy is screwed. Our economy is screwed. And among those countries are Germany, Austria, and Italy. And of course, Hungary, we already saw last week. They said right from the start, we'll pay the rubles. So let me show you this article from The Guardian. It says, German and Austrian energy firms seek to meet Putin's terms for gas payments. So European energy companies are scrambling to find a workaround that allows them to pay for Russian gas without falling foul of EU sanctions amid political chaos sparked by the Kremlin's decision to cut off supplies to Poland and Bulgaria. Again, I hate to go off on a tangent here again, but this is really, it doesn't make sense for Russia to accept payment in euros and dollars. They can't use them. Do you understand? They can't use them. And the people buying the gas have put sanctions on Russia. So that's a hostile act. Like the official name, you know how the terminology, what the terminology for sanctions is? It's called a unilateral coercive measure. Okay? Now, obviously, if it's mandated by the UN, it's not unilateral, but it's a coercive measure. Okay? You're coercing someone into doing something. Now, the idea that Russia should send gas for free, I mean, I don't know where they get this from, but that's basically what they're saying. So, you know, the idea that the Kremlin is doing this just to start political chaos, I don't know where they come up with this. So big gas distributors in Germany and Austria confirmed they were exploring ways to continue to make payments after Putin signed a decree at the end of March calling for a special procedure for foreign buyers' fulfillment of obligations to Russian suppliers of natural gas. Again, that's a very long way of just saying pay in rubles. The decree stipulates that non-Russian buyers of gas must pay in rubles, opening a special K-type account. I explained all of this to you just 1 minute ago. Germany's economy minister, Robert Habeck, suggested on Thursday that Berlin could comply. He said the payments will be made in euros and then transferred by Gazprom Bank into a so-called K account, insisting that this was compatible with sanctions. But hours later, a spokesperson for the EU Commission said that complying with the decree is a breach of sanctions. If companies pay in euros, they are not in breach of the sanctions. What we cannot accept is that companies are obliged to open a second account in rubles and that the payment is complete only when converted into rubles. So again, I wouldn't blame you if you're confused because this sounds like a bunch of gibberish. Let me just break this down. Here's the document from the EU just a few days ago. Okay, here's the advisory they released. And if you zoom in, and number 3 says, is it still possible to pay for gas after, you know, Russia's decree saying that it has to be in rubles? And the EU says, yes, this appears possible. EU companies can ask their Russian counterparts to fulfill their contractual obligations in the same manner as before the adoption of the decree, basically by depositing the due amount in euros or dollars. And Putin's decree, whatever you want to call it, it does not preclude a payment process which is in line with EU restrictive measures. So a few days ago, the EU are saying, yes, it's fine. You can pay in rubles. And now they're saying, no, it's not fine. The EU position right now is that if the gas sale is only complete once it's been converted into rubles, then it's a breach of sanctions. But if it's considered that you have paid immediately once you send the euros or the dollars, so before they're converted into rubles, if that's enough to get the gas, then it's not a breach of sanctions. Does that make sense? They're being very technical. They're being extremely technical. At the end of the day, you will still be sending Russia euros and dollars, okay? That's not changing. The EU is saying that if the payment is considered done and you can get the gas from the moment you send the euros or the dollars, then that's okay. It doesn't breach the sanctions. But if you have to have that converted into rubles, do it yourself or through Gazprom Bank or through Mickey Mouse or whatever, then it's a breach of sanctions. So they're being extremely technical, but I'm just telling you what the position is and what's changed. I hope that's clear because they are being pedantic for sure. Now, going back to the article, they say EU energy ministers are due to meet on Monday, where the capitals will try to forge a common line for companies to follow. On Thursday, the German distributor Uniper and Austria's OMV confirmed they were examining methods of complying with both the decree and the sanctions regime. So firms could turn to legal guidance issued by the EU last week. That's the document that I just showed you here, which said that it appears possible to send money to Gazprom Bank without breaching sanctions. The guidance states that this would rely on a declaration from one or both signatories to the gas purchase. So that means basically a declaration from the gas buyer and from Russia that the transaction is completed once the initial euro or dollar payment has been made. So that's exactly what I just explained to you. In theory, this would avoid a European state or private energy company being complicit in a currency conversion involving Russia's central bank, which is subject to sanctions. However, the EU advised gas companies to seek confirmation from the Russian side that this was allowable under Putin's Decree 172. Now, a spokesperson for Uniper, which is one of Germany's main buyers of gas from Russia, confirmed on Thursday that it was in talks with Gazprom in close coordination with the German government over concrete payment modalities, but said it would continue to pay in euros for now. Yeah, well, again, that's not changing. I don't know why. Uniper can say for its contracts, we consider a payment conversion compliant with sanctions law and the Russian decree to be possible. For our company and for Germany as a whole, it is not possible to do without Russian gas in the short term. This would have dramatic consequences for our economy. So again, this is the thing that a lot of people seem to conveniently forget. They think that it's just a question of, like, you know, refusing to buy the gas from Russia and going elsewhere. What do you mean elsewhere? Where are you going to get all this gas from? Again, Poland has options, sure. Germany, do they have options? Germany doesn't have a single LNG terminal. At least Poland has one. It's not enough on its own, but at least that. Austria gets 80% of its gas from Russia, so that's the overwhelming majority. Do you know what would happen if that was cut off? Like, I don't forget it, like, it's bye-bye. 80%. This is madness to think that you can just, like, decide not to pay. And again, I really think that I have to be clear about this. No one is asking Russia is not asking anyone to send rubles. They're saying, keep sending your euros and your dollars like usual. But you have to open the second account where we will convert it into rubles for you. It's like a technicality just to get around it. It's quite smart, honestly, because it's a win-win for everybody. But, you know, some people, they just want to see the world burn, I guess. They just don't care. They think that if you don't send a gazillion billion dollars worth of weapons and you don't cut off Russian gas, then you are working for the Kremlin. That's like the conventional wisdom right now. Very intellectual. So OMV, an Austrian oil and gas company, is also looking at ways to pay for gas without contravening EU sanctions. They said that we have analyzed the Gazprom request about payment methods in light of the EU sanctions and are now working on a sanctions-compliant solution. Now, the Financial Times reported that companies in Hungary and Slovakia, as well as Italy's Eni, were also considering signing up for Russian accounts in the hope of securing continued supplies. Poland and Bulgaria have taken a defiant position, refusing to sign up to Putin's preferred arrangement under any conditions. So we covered all of this already. Germany, which is Europe's largest economy and largest Russian gas user, has adopted a more emollient tone amid fears, disputed by some analysts that an embargo would be impossible without crashing its economy. I'd love to see who these analysts are, these really galaxy-brained guys. So basically, the main EU member states resisting tougher gas sanctions on Russia were Austria, Germany, and Hungary. Yeah, because they depend heavily on Russian gas. We are, quote, we are counting on there being consequences for these countries, meaning Austria, Germany, Hungary, Italy, Slovakia, which seek to comply with Putin's ruble payment decree. And that as a result, they will cease paying in rubles. So basically what they're saying is they want to punish Germany, Austria, Slovakia, Italy, Hungary for paying in rubles, right? So that it deters others. Again, I really think that this is really dangerous. You know, this is not perhaps on the same level as the nuclear war thing. Nuclear war thing, like it's a side issue, you know. But my point is that this is reckless. This is really reckless. This idea that, yeah, so what if the whole economy is destroyed and everything becomes more expensive, agriculture, industry, services, because they cannot run without gas and oil. Who cares? You have to ban it because it's Russian. My goodness. I mean, they are incapable of thinking 5 fucking seconds into the future. It's really something. It's really something. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said on Wednesday that the Kremlin was using fossil fuels to try to blackmail us. It's not a blackmail. If the Russians really wanted to blackmail you, they would just cut off the gas. They would cut off the gas completely and say, we don't care. We don't want any of your money. Do XYZ. That would be real blackmail because they would force you to be without gas. Russia's not forcing anyone to be without gas. They're saying we will give you everything is exactly the same. You just have to open an account and we'll take care of the rest. Honestly, in some ways, you could say Russia's being too lenient because I would never, ever imagine the US doing something like that. The US would be like, embargo, fuck you. That's it. Look at what they did to Cuba. Look at what they did to Syria, Iran. Embargo. Game over. Goodbye. But you know, some people, these bureaucrats, they really, they are so desperate to grovel and to lick Uncle Sam's boots. They are willing to do everything. But of course, they're not affected, right? So if they cut off the gas, their lifestyle is not going to change because they can still buy gas. They still have the same rich mansion and lifestyle. Nothing changes for them. They can buy expensive food. They already do. Right? They don't care. They're willing to sacrifice everything just to, well, actually, sorry, I should rephrase that. They're willing to sacrifice their own citizens and constituents just to please Uncle Sam. And it really is another manifestation of how obedient and submissive and groveling these EU bureaucrats are. They are quite something else, really. They're quite something. My goodness. So in any case, that's the latest on all this gas issue and payments in rubles. Again, I've covered every single one of these developments from the beginning till the latest one today on May 1st. So if you want to learn more about how this gas payment works, why this started, why Russia's demanding it, what effect it's having on Russia's economy, all of these are in the channel. Go check them out. And thanks for subscribing. So let me move on to the next topic. I just want to say thank you to Beer and Flies for the super chat. I can't tell what superhero that is, but it says, "You're amazing." You're very kind. And we've got some other ones over here as well. This is from Dak Med. Says, "Dude, please say I love truth and the power in it." I love truth and the power in it. Chuck, thank you for the sticker. Ivan, thank you for the sticker. And Dak says, "If you know anything about Russian history, we never did anything to be aggressive. We love peace for thousands of years, even though we had some bad people who doesn't." So I don't know what I was listening to the other day. Something from BBC, maybe. I don't know what. In any case, they were saying something about how, the Russians are just paranoid and they're making all of this up about, existential threat because during every 100 years or so they get attacked by someone, Napoleon, Hitler, and so on. I don't think they're not making that shit up. What you're seeing right now with let's ban Russian tennis players, let's ban Russian gas, let's ban Russian music, ban everything. Like they're even trying to rewrite the crucial, pivotal, or central role that the Soviet Union played in defeating Nazis in World War II. They're even trying to remove that. So I really think this is a disgusting hatred of Russians or Russophobia, whatever you want to call it. It's a very nasty element that is resurfacing. It's coming up to, it's bubbling up, and we're seeing it in plain sight. It's just overflowing, and it's really disgusting because it's so uncalled for and hysterical, truly hysterical. And it contradicts everything that they claim to stand for in the West about equality and human rights and diplomacy. Where's the diplomacy? Where are the human rights? You're banning Russian players tennis players for what their governments. What the fuck has that got to do with that? Like, are you mad? Yes, maybe they're mad. I don't know. Like, I don't know. They are even talking casually about nuclear war. So it's worth contemplating what mental state they're in. I really don't know what to say. Like, this is leaving me speechless. And me and Pepe were joking about this, right? Like, we are journalists, and we can see that the decisions these banks are making are wrong. We can see what these governments are doing. All of these high-level decisions from the military, from the banks, from the energy firms, they're all wrong. And if we know this, it's our job to know this. How can they not know this? They must know these things, and yet they still keep egging on some sort of larger confrontation. It's really, really something else. I don't know what to say. My goodness. Again, we're not done with Ukraine. I honestly, man, I would really love nothing more than for them to find a solution, because this is my fear is that they are making this continue needlessly, to make money. And that's not far-fetched. It's really not far-fetched. I think there are some other goals at play. Not me. I don't have to say I think. All I have to tell you is go listen to Joe Biden and Lloyd Austin, and they will tell you themselves. The goal is to weaken Russia. We have to remove Putin. What was the exact Biden quote? He basically said regime change, right? Wow. I'm stunned because something, when I was still a student, we really had a heavy focus on the Cold War. So extremely detailed. I'm so grateful for that, because I think it's the next to World War II, it's the best thing that you can study to understand the world today. And one thing that was abundantly clear is that You don't engage in hot war and direct confrontation between the US and Russia because it's the end of the world. It's something called mutually assured destruction. The idea that we have nukes and you have nukes. And if you fire one nuke, we'll hit you with 100 nukes and we'll destroy the planet. We'll all be gone and we'll all die. And it's this deterrent that makes sure that you don't have this issue. Now, unfortunately, that also means that you have proxy wars. So basically, you have the US and Russia fighting against each other, but using other people to do it, right? So you saw that in Africa, in Vietnam, all over the place, right? So you always had these proxy wars where one side was supporting the other and so on. And of course, they were very, very bloody confrontations. And my point is that you never, even at the height of the Cold War, even during the Cuban Missile Crisis, you never had a U.S. president saying we should get rid of the Russian leader, or we should coup him, or regime change, and the defense secretary saying that the goal is to weaken Russia. This is fucking insane. You would never say that. Yet these people are reckless. They are completely reckless. They're absolutely reckless. I cannot tell you how dangerous this is. Again, I know it's kind of a joke in a way because, these countries, they engage in war. And in diplomacy, they're supposed to be like really fancy and polite. Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? It's such a contrast. But you still have it. Do you understand? You still have it. There is an etiquette. You even if you're bombing the other guy, even if the US and the Russians, right, they're fighting each other in some other country, they still come and sit at the table. And there's like a basic minimum of sort of humility. That's gone. That's my point. Like it's so bad that even that facade, this kind of like show is gone. Right? This act is man. Okay, so I used to joke about this because, for example, in the what was it? In the U.S. Congress, the people in that building, there's a lot of evil coming out of that building, right? Like, how many wars have they started from that building? I'm talking, after World War II, right? So, I mean, Korea, you name it. Syria, there's so much misery and destruction and sanctions and all sorts of things that have come out of that building. And yet, by the way, the same thing can be said about the Houses of Parliament, right? So about the Commons. So we're talking about Westminster in London. And yet, do you see how they speak to each other? Especially in the UK, the Right Honourable Gentleman, Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady. They have this like sort of, it's so funny seeing that because at the end of the day, these people are criminals. They're fucking gangsters. They are gangsters. They are stinking rich. They have two jobs. The public service is the side job, right? It should be the other way around. It's not. The being a member of parliament is their side job. They just utterly stinking rich, and all they do is wage war, and they make money for banks and corporations, and yet they want to speak politely to each other. And if you dare say something bad, they will eject you from the chamber. Like, what the fuck? You just bombed another country and you're annoyed about a fucking swear word? It's so funny, this act. It's really an act. And I can't remember this old guy's name. He was some old MP, and he called David Cameron dodgy, right? So for those of you who don't know, in the UK, when you say dodgy, it's like somebody who's shady, maybe corrupt. That's what it means. And he was implying that David Cameron, the Prime Minister at the time, is corrupt. Dodgy Dave. And the speaker tells him, you have to retract the comment or I will kick you out. And he refuses to, and he kicks him out. But yet, like in that same chamber, they would like vote to bomb places. And it's just, I don't know, it's so ridiculous to me. It's the same thing in the US, right? They'll vote to sanction a country into oblivion and kill God knows how many civilians there, starve them to death. But if you say the word bitch, oh my God. Like, wow, really. It's something, man. It's really something. Okay, so give me a second just to check if we've received any messages before I go off on another rant. Give me a second. I'm just refreshing. Because I don't get any. I don't see all the messages all the time. Thank you, Chuck, and thank you, Pepsi. Says, can you please upload your streams to Spotify? You got it. And thank you for the super chat. I'm just seeing if I missed anybody else's super chat. Again, please forgive me. There's so many. I say that positively. I'm overwhelmed, and I'm very grateful to you. So please, excuse me if I miss one. I don't see one. My head is elsewhere. Also, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next and what we're going to talk about. So, trying to read that at the same time. Thank you, Tristan, for the super sticker. That's what they call it, a super sticker. Okay. And I think that's everything. Oh, there were super chats from yesterday with Pepe, and I was interviewing him, so I couldn't read them. Riza says, enjoyed the information and analysis. Thank you, Richard. You're most welcome. Marvin says, God bless Pepe, Richard Medhurst, you guys crushing it with the truth. Thank you. This is Gibson. Gibson says, Lloyd Austin was a failed general in Afghanistan, millions of dollars unaccounted for. Yeah, I mean, failed general or otherwise, he fulfills his role as a Raytheon board member quite well. And I know I should say former because technically he resigned, but this is really it's a formality really. It's like Dick Cheney resigning as Halliburton CEO right before he becomes vice president with George Bush, right? And then what does he do? He goes and starts the war on terror. Invading Afghanistan, invading Iraq, and who do you think made money from that? It's not just, the military-industrial complex. No, it's very specifically one of the companies is Halliburton, which, again, like I just told you, the vice president was the CEO till just a few months ago. So they're making money from Halliburton are very, very diversified, right? They have a very diverse portfolio. So they're doing everything from contracts to oil. They're profiting in all sorts of ways from the war. Like, they shouldn't limit themselves to just looting in one way. No, they should be diversified plundering. Wow. I don't even know what that company's worth. It's the figure is something astronomical. It's really one of those companies that is the bedrock. It's really the definition of military-industrial complex. It's a behemoth. Please don't quote me on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Halliburton is even bigger than Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Northrop and BAE Systems, all of these weapons dealers, because that's how big they are, right? Actually, I'm interested to look that up. Let me just check a second. And again, I think it's maybe not fair to do that now because I don't know if they are. Hold on, let's see over here. So, I'm getting all sorts of figures. We'll look at it later. It's okay. I'll check it out afterwards. But I just found something from Yep. So their revenue, Halliburton's revenue, wow, that's quite big. It's about Yep. So their revenue just this year, from what I'm seeing, is about how many billions? 21 billion, I think it was. Yeah, 23 billion for 2018. So not too long ago. But you should look at their figures during the war on terror, or I should say the height of the war on terror. In any case, I'm sure some of you might have looked that up quicker than me, but my point doesn't change, right? That these people are really quite you don't really leave the job. It's like, former CIA agent. What do you mean former CIA? Yeah, of course, there are some people who really they get sick of it and they speak the truth afterwards. But most of the time, it's like you're not really former CIA. In any case, shall we continue with the next topic? And thank you to Olga for the super chat. Thank you to Lana for the super sticker, and again to Beer and Flies. Okay. The next topic we're going to talk about is about plundering, ironically. We're going to talk about plundering. And I saw this from the New York Times, just popped up on my radar a few hours ago. And I thought we should discuss it. We should take a look at what they're saying. And I can give you my thoughts on it afterwards, okay? So... You guys can see that? Okay, sorry, I'm not feeling so well. I need to go drink something in a second. Just let me get some water 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, just a second, and we'll continue. Okay, we're ready. I saw this article on the New York Times just earlier, caught my eye, and I thought we could go through it and then I'd give you my thoughts. So this is the New York Times. The headline reads, Ukraine says Russia looted ancient gold artifacts from a museum. So the heist started when a mysterious man in a white lab coat showed up at the museum. A squad of Russian soldiers stood behind him with guns, watching eagerly. Using long tweezers and special gloves, the man in the white coat carefully extracted scores of special gold artifacts, more than 2,300 years old, from cardboard boxes in the cellar of a museum in Melitopol, a southern town in Russian-occupied territory, according to Ukrainian officials. The gold items were from the Scythian Empire and date back to the 4th century BC. And then they disappeared, the Russian soldiers, the expert. And so Melitopol's mayor is saying that the orcs have taken hold of our Scythian gold. So again, this is the racist language that they use against the Russians, orcs, apparently. This is one of the largest and most expensive collections in Ukraine, and today we don't know where they took it. The New York Times then continues, and they say this was hardly the first attack on Ukrainian culture since the war began. In Mariupol, the town that has been hammered for weeks by Russian forces, officials said that Russian agents broke into an art museum and stole masterpiece paintings, a famous sculpture, and several highly valued Christian icons. Across Ukraine, officials said dozens of Orthodox churches, national monuments, and cultural heritage sites have been destroyed. In one town near Kiev, Russian soldiers shot the bust of a famous Ukrainian poet in the head. On Saturday, Ukrainian officials said that more than 250 cultural institutions had been damaged or destroyed. But this heist, just a few days ago in Melitopol, is the most brazen, they say. So, they're saying also that There are 50,000 exhibits, from Soviet-era medals to old battle axes, but its prized collection was a set of rare gold ornaments from the Scythians, a nomadic people that founded a rich, powerful empire centered in the Crimean Peninsula from the 8th century to 2nd century, so 8th century BC to 2nd century AD. And that's what they took. And this is a picture of it up here. This is a gold helmet, and it was similar to what they're taking. It's not clear if this is the exact same stuff, because they're not specifying, because this is displayed at a museum exhibition last year in Kiev. Now, I just wanted to say a few things, because honestly, if this is true, like if the Russians actually did this, it's despicable. Like, there's no question about it. This is really an unfortunate consequence of war, is that obviously the most severe consequence is that civilians are being killed, infrastructure is being destroyed, but the cultural and historical artifacts is always plundered. I remember Goering, so he was head of the Luftwaffe, the Nazi Germany's Air Force. Correct me if I'm wrong. By the time they had plundered, and invaded most of Europe, I think he had the largest personal art collection in history, because of all the stuff they'd stolen. Just emptied museum after museum. So that gives you an idea of how severe this can go. One thing that stuck out to me is that seeing the New York Times talk about this, like, great, this is something that should be highlighted, because it's very, very severe and egregious. But I couldn't help but think of this photograph, and this is a photograph of U.S. soldiers liberating Iraq from its gold. All right, very nice. Right now, I'm actually curious how many tons of gold the Americans stole from Iraq. Yeah, I'm actually curious how much it amounts to, because whatever value they're saying, it's probably an understatement, right? Now, obviously, when I say liberating Iraq, I'm joking, right? They stole the stuff, right? They said, oh, we're going for weapons of mass destruction, and then they actually went and did all this stuff. And another photograph that really upset me is this tank in the entrance of an Iraqi museum. Just, like, no respect whatsoever. No respect. Look how they just damage priceless history. I mean, we are talking about Iraq. Okay, do you understand? When we say Iraq, we're talking about Mesopotamia. So, look at that. Look at this ignorance. It's really astounding. And when we talk about Iraq, we're talking about Mesopotamia, right? This is, by definition, the cradle of civilization. This is where agriculture was invented, writing. I mean, everything. It's the, I don't know what to say. Cradle of civilization should suffice. And the history there is priceless. I mean, you can go back not 2,000 years, 10,000 years, and you will find evidence of left behind of human of inhabitants and human progress and civilization. And there are too many civilizations to name, really. I mean, you go, for example, to Syria, you go to Iraq, you will find ruins from every civilization, almost every civilization you can imagine, right? Let's take Iraq, you'll find from the Babylonians to the British, you go to Syria, you'll find from the Ottomans, the French, the Greeks, the Romans. It's truly limitless. And that should give you an idea, right? One thing that I talked about the other week when I was doing I was speaking to British university students, and just to kind of drive this point home, I told them about the Umayyad Mosque, which is in Damascus. And why is this mosque special? Well, several reasons. The Muslims, they consider this to be the fourth holiest site in Islam, okay? And this building is very old. Very, very, very old. So if I show you just an image of it, you can see multiple civilizations in one picture. So first of all, the columns, these are Corinthian columns, which are Hellenistic. The arches that are built on top of the column, these are Roman arches. And this was actually, first of all, it was an Aramean temple for the rain god Haddad. Then it became a Hellenistic temple, a Roman temple, then a church. Then it was half church, half mosque. And then they sold the rest of the land to the Muslims and it became a mosque, a full mosque. And so right there in the middle, do you see the mausoleum in green? That is where the head of John the Baptist is. So, if you know the story from the Bible, Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist, the very one, right there. So you see the Roman, the Greek, the Muslim, and the Christian architecture all in one place. This is fascinating. I don't know any other building on earth that has been used by so many religions consecutively. It's truly fascinating. This is again something that I'm so proud of when we talk about Syrian heritage and culture. It's priceless, truly priceless. And some of the things that Syria has, like Palmyra is even older, right? Way, way, way older than this. We're talking 2,000, 3,000 years old, 4,000 years old. I mean, there are so many. It's actually been destroyed once and rebuilt. You had at one point, it was ruled by a queen named Zenobia. And what's really upsetting to me is that the henchmen that we're talking about ISIS, right? That were sent by the West. They're moderate rebels, right? And Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Turkey and Israel, who all of them, they worked with these fanatic groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They went and blew up the arch in Palmyra. This is Palmyra. I went there when I was a child. That is the famous the arch, the entrance, and now it looks like this, blown up by ISIS. And then the museum in Palmyra, I've also been inside there. Do you know what they did? They went in and they kidnapped the museum director and they tortured him. They wanted him to reveal where he had hidden. They said that he had hidden very priceless antiques and artifacts, and they wanted them presumably to perhaps sell them or destroy them. Who knows? And he wouldn't reveal them, and they executed him and hanged him from one of the columns. And do you know what the UK did? The United Kingdom built some shitty fucking replica of this arch from Palmyra in Trafalgar Square, like as if that's supposed to make up for it. After they spent all this money destroying Syria and making sure that groups like ISIS are able to do these heinous acts, then they make some stupid, cheap plastic replica like this. Look at this. I mean, who wants this garbage? What is this worthless piece of trash? How about you don't fund groups and help groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS in the first place, and then we can keep the actual history and we don't have things like Palmyra being destroyed, Sorry, just going back to, I lost my, here we go. So this is the original, right? And they completely destroyed it. And then of course there's a Roman amphitheater in Palmyra as well, which again, you see all these civilizations that have left things there. And there's a famous photo on the internet. I've shown it to you before. You have basically like before and after, before the war in Syria started in 2011, they're doing ballet and other cultural events in the Roman amphitheater, like it's still being used for those things. And then afterwards, it's being used as a spot for executions by ISIS. Like, did you see the degradation, this degeneracy, this transition from something civilized to something barbaric? And who is at the center of this? It's Saudi Arabia, it's Qatar, it's Turkey, Israel, the UK, the US, all of these countries that are ganged up to try and destroy Syria. And I'm sorry, but if you think this is a price worth paying, never mind all the civilians that have been killed. Like this is secondary, but it's still just as bad. This is what they do, right? So I find this very, I'm really astonished when the New York Times, like, great, I'm so glad you care about countries' cultural heritage and their history being destroyed by war. Where the fuck were you when the Americans were doing things like this and stealing the gold in Iraq? Where were you? Do you know what the New York Times was doing? The New York Times had people like Judith Miller selling the war in Iraq. Oh, there are weapons of mass destruction and blah, blah, fucking blah. So do you understand why this is so frustrating? Because they have no problem literally driving fucking tanks through museums in Iraq, like this pig shit ignorance that you see here. And then they have the nerve to talk about what Russia's doing. Like this is what they do in the Middle East. They drive tanks into our museums. And then they have the nerve to complain about some fucking gold ornaments. Yes, the principle is wrong. It's not about the size. But you see the hypocrisy, why it's so angering? And then, man, I mean, I haven't even gotten into the other things in Syria, like the Aleppo. There's also an Umayyad mosque in Aleppo completely destroyed. The bazaar in Aleppo completely burnt down. And then, of course, there's the Crac de Chevalier, which is the Crusader castle, also bombed. And yeah, I mean, look, man, this is a war. You have both sides that are doing the destruction, yes. But who's causing the war? Who sent all of these millions of dollars, billions of dollars, billions, and weapons, and funded these terrorists, and prolonged and encouraged this war? You know, whatever criticisms you want to make, the Syrian government was not going around and fucking blowing up Palmyra and Crac de Chevalier. It just wasn't. Who was doing that? The so-called moderate fucking rebels. So this is really infuriating. And then, of course, with Gaddafi, you want to talk about gold. Why do you think they went and killed Gaddafi? Because Gaddafi had 144 tons of gold in his Libyan central bank. And you can see this in Hillary Clinton's emails, right? How they are talking about the gold that he has. And why this is bad for their interests. Because Gaddafi's... Hold on, I'm going to pull up this email for you because you should see this. You have to see this. So here, this is, it's on WikiLeaks, I think, as well. Yeah, here it is. So, they're saying Gaddafi's government holds 143 tons of gold and a similar amount in silver. And do you know why they are very worried about this? Because of the golden dinar. Do you see that? This gold was accumulated prior to the current rebellion and was intended to be used to establish a pan-African currency based on the Libyan golden dinar. This plan was designed to provide the Francophone African countries with an alternative to the CFA franc. So, because Gaddafi wanted to create a new currency backed by his gold, it's called the golden dinar. He wanted the African countries to use this currency and to sell their resources in their currency. Kind of like what Russia's doing now, right? We're only going to sell you gas in rubles. So we prop up our currency, not yours. Because right now, African countries, I mean, they've already been plundered for centuries, but they sell their resources predominantly in dollars and, you know, currencies that are denominated, sales that are denominated in Western currencies and controlled by the West. And you have 14 countries in 14 countries in Africa whose monetary policy is controlled by France. They are using a French currency, the CFA franc. And so Gaddafi is telling these African countries, you know what, let's ditch the dollar, let's ditch the CFA franc, and we make our own currency, the golden dinar, and we only sell our resources in our currency. And that's why they fucking killed him. Do you understand? That's why they destroyed Libya, because he threatened the dollar and the CFA franc, because that's the red line. When you start messing with their paper, they come for you. So where do you think that gold is now? Who has that gold? Where's Libya's oil? Does Libya look like a democracy to you now? They ruined it. They ruined that country. There is nothing they can say about Gaddafi that is worse than what Libya is now. Nothing. And so they come in and they take all the gold. They destroy you. They kill the entire country, its infrastructure, just to take the gold. And they come and they plunder the museums like this. They destroy them and treat them like dirt, like garbage. And then they have the nerve to talk about Russia and Ukraine. I'm sorry, but Russia, even if this story is 100% true, and I would be the first to condemn the Russians for doing this if they really stole that gold from the museum in Ukraine. Even if it's true, it doesn't even register. It's a drop in the ocean compared to what the Americans, the British, and the French have done in Africa and the Middle East. It doesn't even fucking register. And what annoys me is how the media, they play this double standard game where they won't pay any sort of attention, like not even close to the amount of attention they pay to Russia's crimes as they do to their own crimes. And these are American papers, right? They should be criticizing, number one, their own governments. Do you understand? I'm a British citizen. I'm not afraid to speak about the British government and what Britain is doing right now and has done for the last centuries, because it's wrong. Do you understand? And they are afraid to do that. They won't do that. And I want to show you again just something that I really cannot. It makes me so angry. When the Americans invaded Iraq, this is what they did. I'm going to read you this exact quote. Okay? So the headline says, U.S. admits military damaged Babylon ruins. So you all know the ancient city of Babylon, right? Yeah, I mean, who doesn't know who doesn't know Babylon? And let me read you this quote because this is going to make your blood boil. This makes me so angry. I am really outraged. So after the 2003 invasion of Iraq, U.S. Marines built a helicopter pad on the ruins of the ancient city of Babylon and filled their sandbags with archaeological fragments from the ancient city. Vibrations from the U.S. helicopters caused the roof of one building to collapse. I am out of words. You know, I speak for a living, and sometimes I see something like this. I'm fucking speechless. I really don't know what to say. This is the pinnacle of ignorance. The pinnacle. This is unforgivable. And look at the arrogance. Look at their fucking arrogance when they're confronted about this. Do you see what they say here? Colonel Coleman, former chief of staff in the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force in Iraq, told the BBC that if the head of the Iraqi Antiquities Board wanted an apology, and quote, if it makes him feel good, we can certainly give him one. Wow. So, you know, like zero respect, right? Zero respect. No respect. They're making fun of it also, like, oh, we can apologize if you want it, if it makes you feel better. Fuck your apology. And look at this also, this arrogance. If it wasn't for our presence, what would the state of those archaeological ruins be? Excuse me? They would not be destroyed. And here's the irony. Saddam Hussein, as much as you want to criticize him for other things, he was trying to rebuild Babylon, specifically Babylon, which makes this statement all the more fucking ignorant and arrogant and disgusting. That's the irony of it. And by the way, the famous gate of Babylon, the Blue Gate, guess where it is? It's not in Iraq. The Germans stole it in the beginning of the 20th century, and it's in the Museum Insel in Berlin. And they don't even have the full gate on display. The gate is so enormous that only the first part of it fits in the museum. The rest of it is in fucking storage. Like a car, like some used fucking car in storage. What do you mean in storage? Give it back to Iraq. It's not yours. Like, this drives me so mad. They plunder and steal so shamelessly. They are so arrogant and brazen and callous about it. They have not one speck of shame about what they do. And then they have the fucking nerve to come and complain about some ounces of fucking gold. I mean, the disconnect here is astronomical. It's unbelievable. I'm speechless. Truly speechless. And what I've told you here, this is minuscule. This is a drop in the ocean. These are 4 examples. Nothing from Libya and Iraq and Syria. It's nothing compared to the overall picture. Man, you want to talk about looting. You got some fucking nerve. And then you have people saying, oh, well, the British Empire and the French Empire, this is old. It's a long time ago. I'm not responsible for that. Really? Oh, really? So you're telling me the UK did not invade Iraq in 2003? The US didn't invade Iraq in 2003? You're telling me the UK doesn't have forces right now in Afghanistan and Syria? Special forces that are still there? Really? Where are all the resources that were stolen? Those also don't exist anymore? They just vanished into thin air? That's really convenient. After you steal and plunder resources and you build yourself up and then say, oh, well, that's a long time ago. Really? Is it? What about the borders? You want to look at the borders in the Middle East and Africa? Who drew those borders? It's the British and the French, right? And those borders, they're still there today, the exact same ones. And they're still causing huge issues, right? So the British, obviously, they helped to create Israel. Look at this. Again, these borders all over here were drawn by the French and the British. Those borders still exist. So don't come here and tell me that there's no effect or impact on the current world. There's no impact today of the British Empire and the French. This is bullshit. You are delusional. Are you so stupid you can't read a fucking map? Really? You think all those nice avenues they have in Paris and London, they built themselves? The resources fell out of the sky? Where'd you get the money for that? man, it's not just the crime of the stealing, it's also the arrogance and the denying it also, right? Like, they won't even admit to it. It's like, what? We never took anything. That's a long time ago. Really fucking convenient. I'm sorry to inform you, it's not a long time ago. There are people that are still alive today who have the keys to their houses in Palestine. They were kicked out of their homes by Israel, which the West created. There are people that are still living in economic misery because their countries were plundered and enslaved by the British and the French and the Americans. So don't come here and tell me this is a long time ago. The Iraq War is not a long time ago. I remember it. Iraq is still under occupation. Syria is still under occupation. Libya is still destroyed. Don't give me this, it's a long time ago, you motherfucking liars. I'm so sick of this, really. The ignorance, the arrogance, it's despicable. It's really despicable. Looting. You got some nerve to talk about looting. In any case, guys, I mean, you know, we shouldn't expect better. Again, what was I saying just an hour ago? I was saying that these governments, the British government, the American government, the US government, they're not really public servants. They work for banks, they work for Wall Street, so they don't have any sense, they don't have any respect for any of this, any of the things I just talked about. Not for human life, not for, you know, cultural heritage. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. I'm not trying to excuse their behavior. On the contrary, it's an indictment. It's an indictment of what they are, what they represent, and who they are. That's what it is. It's an indictment. And I think the fact that they refuse to teach any sort of, you know, a semblance of the things that I've just told you, which are really, you know, these are not secrets. It's really an indictment of the education system as well. You know, keeping people dumbed down. Like, oh yeah, decolonization, that was in 1945. The world is perfect now. Like, you're funny, really funny. In any case, Claudia just messaged me right now. She's very kind. She sent me a update. Hold on, let me. Thank you. This is last time we were at 8:48. We hit the goal, and Claudia has just sent me a brand new crab dance because we are now at 8:68. So please give me a second to download the crab dance and play it for you. I have not seen this myself, so I'm excited to see what she's added to it. Give me 1 second. Every time we hit a milestone, she adds something new to it. I really have no clue what to expect. Let's see. Okay, hold on. Here. Okay. Again, thank you to everybody who's supporting the show on Patreon. I'm very grateful. And let's play the crab dance. Come on.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line, claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch out.
Thank you for Iron Dome, which is a technical marvel.
والله انتوا كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro, and then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have two number 9s. Number 9 large.
we got him.
I told myself, I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious.
Why you texting? Why, you're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Oh my God, what was that? Oh no! She put our new Minister of Truth, Madam Minister. What should we call her? Is she the Secretary of Truth? Madam Minister? I don't know. Let's call her Madam Secretary of Truth. That was amazing. Wow. I can't believe that's a thing. And I really find this funny when people say something like, oh, this is communism, or this is something that you would see in China. No, why China? Like, why is everything bad that the West does? Like, every bad thing the UK does or the US does, it has to be somebody else's fault. Why not? Oh, that's very American to do that. Or that's very British of the British to do. Why does it always have to be somebody else's fault? I think this is very childish. It's sort of like a refusal to look at oneself inwards, right? And another thing that I would add, I know this has nothing to do with the crab dance really, but still, one of the side effects, one of the consequences of constantly attacking these countries, whether it's the same ones, the official enemies, the evil ones, right, as they say. So let's, Syria, Iran, Russia, so on, is that they end up worsening or causing the very same things they complain about, right? So if you constantly try to infiltrate a country with spies, like actual spies, like I'm not talking about, DNC disinformation. No, I'm talking about things like, a Mossad agent almost becoming the defense secretary in Syria, right? We talked about that. That's a true story. When you do shit like that, you automatically create an atmosphere of fear, and you start contributing to this whole, oh, look, that's an authoritarian state. Oh, they have all of these measures in place. They are restricting XYZ. You are contributing to that. Like, it's a catch-22, right? I think they know this. They have to know this, but they don't care. Anyway, somebody said it perhaps a bit more eloquently than me. Although I like to think I haven't done such a bad job. But anyway, you understand my point, and I think my point is well taken. Beer and Flies, thank you so much for your super chat, or super sticker, I should say. You're very kind. Thank you to Keep It Real. And there's another super chat that I missed. Give me 1 second. I'll see what your name was. It was from Jose. Thank you very much. Jose says, also true, we can't ever forget these crimes. Absolutely. And we have another one here from Pittsburgh. Dude 87 says, what's going with Peru's indigenous protesters against Chinese copper mining companies? Is the CIA maybe involved in trying to coup Castillo? So I am not up to date whatsoever on this topic, but I thank you for bringing it to my attention. So I will try and cover it next time in the next live stream, and I'll get back to you. I don't want to say anything when I haven't read up on it, but let me cover it next time. And thank you, Pittsburgh Dude 87. And we've also got somebody called Morrison sent me a donation on PayPal, but I can't see it because PayPal confiscated it. So the email that I get, it says, the payment from XYZ is being processed. What that means is you've probably used the naughty words. You said Syria or Palestine or Iran, and now they've taken it aside. I'm not joking, by the way. Those are actually the trigger words, right? Because they have sanctions against these countries, and just by saying the name, like the name is forbidden. They have to review it now. It's a security concern. Wow. I wish I was joking. It's true. It's completely true. So again, I don't know what your message was, Morrison, but thank you for that. I hope it goes through. Sometimes they don't. And thank you. Thank you, Bridget L. Jones, for your kind comment. And Akbar is quoting Joe Biden. Joe Biden says, go do you, boom, boom, boom. A brilliant orator and U.S. president. Yes. I think these are all the top news stories that we covered, right? Basically, I tried to look at every single aspect of what's happening internationally and, of course, in Ukraine. So we did the gas payments and so on. I think that's mostly it, right? And of course, Pittsburgh Dude just brought my attention to what's happening in Peru. I'll try my best to get on that. And I just want to say one thing. You know what's ironic is that, like I said, this payment is being put on hold from one of you onto PayPal because you said maybe Syria or Palestine, I don't know. But you can go online now if you want and easily donate to buy weapons for people in Ukraine. Like if you did that for Palestinians, they put you in prison. I'm not kidding. You would be charged with terrorism and put in a fucking cell, like in a black site. It's that's it. There's no why or resistance. They will fucking dead you. Like it's over, you know. And I think that is so funny. I'm being sarcastic. It's not funny, but like it's so indicative of the double standard, right? Like, you know, you can go online and just pay for Ukrainian weapons and you know whatever. You can even go and fight, right? As long as it's for the right people. But if you do the other way, you're a terrorist. And you know, it's again, it's the whole thing upside down, right? So we have a comment here from Hamid Reza, says, please cover the JCPOA agreement. Where is it going? Again, I don't usually flex, but I must say the truth. And this is, I mean, this channel, I'm one of the only people who's covering the Iran nuclear deal, like actually on the ground, independently. And I have a whole playlist on the channel. And this is easily, I mean, one of the biggest foreign policy domains, right? No question. Now, the whole thing, it was really close to being signed. I know some people say, oh, it was weeks away from being signed. It was days away from being signed. It was close. Okay, I don't, no one can, we don't have a crystal ball, but it was very close. And of course, the war in Ukraine started. There are a lot of people pissed about this, you know, because they're saying, oh, Russia held up the nuclear deal and it's their fault. And for two reasons, because not only the war started, but the Russians, they demanded a written guarantee. They said to the Americans, listen, the whole point about the Iran deal is that Iran caps its nuclear program, and in exchange, the United States lifts sanctions on Iran. And Russia said, if everything goes back to normal and you do lift the sanctions, we don't want you to put new sanctions, fresh sanctions on Iran because they are dealing with Russia, right? Because right now there are so many sanctions on Russia, more than Iran, actually. So on Russia, there are well over 5,500 sanctions. And so the idea is that if you, as a country or a company, you have business dealings with Russia, you will get sanctioned too. That's the whole idea. That's how they isolate countries, right? So you basically turn Russia into a pariah. And the Russians, they wanted a guarantee that Iran will not be punished with the secondary sanctions for having ties with the Kremlin. And the Americans were like, fuck you, no. I mean, I understand slightly their position because this has nothing to do really with the nuclear deal. It's sort of an extra thing. But it makes total sense because, again, why do you think they've been negotiating this for eons? I mean, the original deal and then now for the last year. I'm telling you, I'm covering this thing very closely. They're really, really trying hard. So I don't think it's fair to say the Russians are trying to sabotage the deal. That's bullshit. The Russians tried harder than anyone to make sure the deal succeeds, right? Again, I'm not saying the other parties, because there's many of them, I'll count them in a second for you, but that they weren't trying. But the Russians really, one of the most, they wanted this to succeed. So I don't think it's fair to say, oh, they're sabotaging it or something. No, it's just a protection, because if the deal is back to normal and then Iran is hit like that, I don't know. And that wouldn't be fair. Now, on the other hand, the Iranians are saying some other things, for example, that weren't resolved. So in Iran, there's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. And the IRGC is designated in the United States as an FTO. FTO means Foreign Terrorist Organization, okay? Those are sanctions. That's what it means. And Iran is demanding that the United States lifts the IRGC from this FTO list. So they want the IRGC delisted as a terrorist organization. And this is of course this is a really, really big deal. And the Americans, I mean, don't take my word for it. Look at the press. Like, just look at the headlines, honestly. people are really, really angry about this in the media. Like, here, let's just go back to Google. Can you see that? When was this published? This is 7th of April. Chairman of Joint Chiefs opposes delisting Iran's IRGC as terrorist organization. Let's just go back to Google. 14th of April. Delisting the IRGC as a terror group would send a terribly wrong message, says Israel's ambassador. I mean, okay, Israel is going to say that. We know that. And then here's from Al Jazeera. Top general says that Iran's Quds force should stay on the terrorist list. I mean, it's not just officials from Israel and the US saying that. It's also in the media. This is kind of like, no, you're giving Iran too many concessions and blah, blah, blah. My point here, I just want to go back to what I was saying, is that I don't think it's 100% fair or correct, factually correct, to say that, oh, it's just the Russian demand that was holding up the deal. This is also a big point of contention. That's why it's still being discussed. Here's a headline from Politico. Look what they say. Iran nuclear deal talks freeze amid terrorist label spat, even with deal on the table. So, negotiations to restore the Iran nuclear deal have reached a complete standstill. Despite having a roughly 27-page agreement virtually ready to go, diplomats are still hung up over one final sticking point between the US and Iran: the status of a powerful branch of the Iranian military, the IRGC. The US placed the group on its FTO list in 2019, part of President Donald Trump's maximum pressure campaign, after pulling out of the nuclear deal, which limited Iran's nuclear ambitions in exchange for sanctions relief. Now the issue is being dragged into the final stages of long-running talks to revive the nuclear deal under Biden. The topic is of such immense political sensitivity in both Tehran and Washington that a compromise has proved impossible and now seems increasingly unrealistic. So the sticking point revolves around the terrorist label technically falling outside the purview of the nuclear agreement, the JCPOA. The US, which maintains numerous other sanctions on Iran, is loath to strike agreements beyond the original deal's contours. Yet Iran insists that the subjects should be interwoven. So the US official told Politico that the US position has been that unless Iran agrees to take certain steps to assuage security concerns beyond the JCPOA, Washington will not lift the terror designation, which itself is beyond the JCPOA, especially given ongoing threats by the IRGC against Americans. The Biden administration is facing bipartisan political resistance at home. Of course it is, right? What did I tell you? Not to strip the terrorist tag. Because of all these factors, the official said the Biden administration is highly likely to drop it. And I just want to make a quick point. Remember when they tell you, oh, Donald Trump is so different, you know, from Biden, and the Democrats and Republicans are not the same? No, they are exactly the same. They both support this, right? So, you know, obviously it's true that this is sort of an improvement based on Trump's behavior, but you cannot say that the Biden administration haven't been dragging their feet. It's the Iran deal is still not in place. We've gone through 2021. We're in 2022. We're almost halfway to 2022. I mean, past 2022, and it's still not back in place. So, you know, until we see results, I would exercise caution. And so they say that the stalemate has made an Iran nuclear deal revival seen as imminent only a few months back, a distant prospect. So this is exactly what I was telling you about. You know, I'm covering this very closely on the ground. And I'm telling you, they were very, very close to finishing it. And now it's really hit sort of it's really come to sort of a stalemate. They say talks also briefly ran aground recently over a demand from Russia, an original signatory on the agreement, that it receives sanctions protections for any future business with Iran. And so this is my point, my original point, where a lot of people were saying, oh, you see, Russia's blocking the deal and they are sabotaging the deal. That's not true. The terrorist label is the biggest point right now. And, you know, I've never read this article before. I know because I'm covering the stuff. Everything I've told you just a few minutes ago is vindicated by this, if you wanted a secondary source. Now, honestly, I don't know what's going to happen, man. I don't have a crystal ball, but a lot of people are quite pessimistic now because there's both these issues. I think, honestly, the IRGC thing is a much bigger sticking point because, you know, the idea that, okay, you know, we'll give Iran an exemption, even as unlikely as that sounds, it's still more likely than the IRGC thing because there's really fundamentally no difference between Republicans and Democrats. When it comes to foreign policy and how they treat Iran, you saw Trump stealing Iranian fuel on the way to Venezuela, and Biden did the same thing, and they both sold it off. Like, that's piracy, literally piracy. You're stealing a cargo and then selling it for money. There's no difference between them. Same sanctions, same everything. So I'm not surprised one iota when they say there's bipartisan support in Washington to keep this label. Do you see how they are no different from Trump and Pompeo? It's the same gang at the end of the day. It's really the same gang. And their idea here, what they're saying is that, well, look, this label, this terrorist label, it's outside the purview of the nuclear deal. Is it really? Let's take a look, because what the Americans have been doing, the trick that they've been playing, is that they have been putting sanctions on Iran and saying, well, this sanction is because of your human rights violations, not because of your nuclear program. And this sanction over here, this is because of your terrorist activities, right? Like, oh, when they say terrorist activities, they basically mean that Iran is supporting the Palestinian resistance against Israel, or it's supporting Syria against, pick your country. There are 12 over a dozen, trying to get rid of Assad. And then Iran is supporting, the Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq, the resistance there, or the resistance in Yemen. Again, right now when we talk about the axis of resistance, Iran is at the center of it. So that's what they mean when they say malign activities in the region. Iran is not like setting puppies on fire or stealing candy from babies. They don't like that Iran is fucking with their imperialist interests and their Zionist interests. That's what it means. They don't want resistance. And so what they've been doing, this trick, is that they've basically been using this vacuum now where there's no nuclear. Well, the nuclear deal is there. The U.S. left. Let's be clear. They're even using this time to keep sanctions on Iran and say, we won't lift these because this one's human rights related and this one's related to terrorism, and we're not removing these. Hold on a second. Stop right there. If these journalists writing about the nuclear deal, and most of them have no clue, if they actually bothered to read the nuclear deal, they would see in the text that it says very, very clearly that the United States must not do anything that makes it harder for Iran to have economic relationships with the rest of the world. When you go and sanction Iran, you are by definition making it harder for Iran to develop and maintain economic ties and trade with other countries. So that's a violation of the deal. It doesn't matter whether you say this sanction is because you burned a puppy alive or you're financing Hamas. It makes no difference. You are violating the deal because the deal is that Iran caps the nuclear program and you stop fucking with Iran's economy. It's that simple. And they are violating that and they're trying to be, smart asses and say, oh, well, this is because of that, and this is not related to nuclear. And now when Iran is legitimately demanding that they remove this label, this terrorism label from the IRGC, which Trump did after leaving the deal, they're saying no. So you see once again how Biden's administration is not only just like Trump, he is a carbon copy because he refuses to walk back a Trump move, a Pompeo move. This sanction, this designation on the IRGC did not exist before 2019. Trump is the one who pulled out of the deal in May 2018 and then he kept going with more and more and more sanctions. And another thing that I can tell you, for example, last year, what the Biden administration did is they went and they stole Press TV's website, presstv.com, and they stole the websites for about 30 different foreign news outlets. Again, these are outlets that are not based in the US. They do not work in the US. They're nothing. They're just .com. And the US government said, we have jurisdiction over anything that ends in .com. And Biden used Donald Trump's sanctions against the IRGC to steal those websites. He's basically attacking the press, right? If you take down, again, take down is putting it mildly, steal. If you steal a news outlet's website, that's censorship. You are effectively blocking the entire planet from accessing this news. You are censoring it. And so they basically said that Press TV is under the control of the IRGC, which Donald Trump placed sanctions on. And that's why they're taking the website. Listen to this logic. This is unbelievable, right? This is like, imagine Iran saying that, this CNN is under the direct command of the CIA, and therefore it's going to take CNN.com's website. Now, I know some of you are going to laugh and say it is. Yes, but it's outrageous. It's an outrageous move. As much as we dislike CNN, it's not okay to just go and take their website, right? Otherwise, we're no different than Trump. Do you see the absurd logic here? So this is, again, one facet of how you can manipulate these sanctions to do anything you like. Attack the press, stop medicine coming in, you name it. And how Biden not only kept this sanction, but acted on it, used it, right? You could very well just leave it there and not act on it. No, they're acting on it. And it's no wonder that Iran wants it removed, because it's outrageous. It's absurd. So it's really funny to me that the Americans, they want things that are outside the nuclear deal, like truly outside the nuclear deal. They say things like, oh, we want Iran to cap its ballistic missile program. What the fuck does the ballistic missile program have to do with their nuclear program? Those are two completely different things. And they say things like, again, supporting Hezbollah, supporting Syria, supporting Hamas, supporting the Hashd al-Shabi, supporting Yemen. They consider this malign activities. This, again, has nothing to do with the nuclear deal. Iran, if it wanted, tomorrow morning could shut down every single nuclear reactor it has and disband its entire atomic energy agency, and it would still be supporting resistance efforts. So these two things are unrelated. And it's the Americans, and they've even got the Germans to say this at one point, and other Europeans to say, oh, we should have a nuclear deal 2.0. Nuclear deal 2.0. You're not even following the first one. Like, the Americans left the first agreement, and now they're talking about a second agreement. Man, they're dreaming. So for me, this is very ironic, because I've seen Pompeo and Donald Trump, attack the nuclear deal, saying it doesn't go far enough. It should include the ballistic missiles and the support for the resistance. And that's why they left, right? And then when Iran says, hey, how about we just go back to the deal, like the way it was in April 2018, before Trump pulled out and slapped us with sanctions. And they're like, no, okay, maybe we'll go back, but we're not lifting all the sanctions. How are you going back then to April 2018? Remember, Trump quit in May 2018. I'm just giving you an idea, like basically before. How are you going back to how it was when the US was in the deal and Iran was abiding by the deal if you're refusing to lift the sanctions that Trump put in place? Like, this makes no sense. This is ridiculous. And I just want to make one thing clear, because, again, this is something that you never hear in the media. And even people in independent media who talk about the nuclear deal, they kind of talk out of their asses sometimes. They say that Iran is building a nuclear weapon. No, there are no nuclear weapons. Do you understand? A country like Germany has a nuclear program. They have nuclear reactors. Yes? You can have a nuclear program without nuclear weapons program, okay? Obviously, to build a nuclear weapon, you must have a nuclear program in the first place, but they're not the same thing, yeah? And the UN body, which is the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, under the additional protocol, they have permission, the nuclear scientists, to go into Iran and go into any nuclear facility they like and examine it and inspect it. And they have cameras that are in all of the nuclear facilities that are recording. They have special seals on the equipment. There's no fucking way that the Iranians are building a weapon without the IAEA knowing. Everybody would know. There's no way to hide this. It's impossible. Again, Scott Ritter, on the channel here, we spoke in detail about why it's impossible to hide that, if you want to go look. And, something that's very important is when they say that Iran is violating the deal, you'll see that a lot in the headlines. I'll just look up something right here. Okay, it's not letting me access it, but let's say you go on Google and you just type Iran violated deal. You can see that they're saying it's breaching the nuclear deal by firing up advanced uranium enriching centrifuges. Okay, so that's The Guardian. Let me explain something to you. That's not a breach of the deal. That is incorrect. That is completely incorrect. The nuclear deal, again, I wish they would read it. Like, please read it. It's not long. It says very clearly that if one of the signatories doesn't respect the deal, and they don't hold up their end of the deal, Iran is going to use that as a reason, as a justification to also not follow the deal. That's how that's under the dispute resolution mechanism. Okay, basically, if there's a fight, there's a disagreement with the deal, how do you fix it? This is in there under Article 26 and 37, I believe, right? So again, just to explain this very clearly, the United States left the nuclear deal, and not just left it, they also reimposed sanctions. And in the text of the deal, it says if there is significant non-compliance, which is just a fancy way of saying if somebody leaves the deal, and there is reimposition of sanctions, which Donald Trump did, he reimposed sanctions, Iran can treat that as justification to stop abiding by its commitments in part or in whole. So when Iran is what are they saying here? Firing up advanced uranium-enriched centrifuges, it is literally allowed to do that if somebody doesn't respect the deal, which is what happened. I cannot believe I have to explain this a million times. It's like if you sign a contract with somebody and they tear up the contract, how can you expect the other guy who held up their end of the deal to just keep doing what's written in the contract when you left? That makes no sense whatsoever. And that's what they're basically saying. And just to prove again how ridiculous and how much they lie in the media, Donald Trump left the nuclear deal in May 2018. For a whole year, so until May 2019, Iran did not change a single thing about its nuclear program. Everything the same. They basically, this demonstrates goodwill. It demonstrates goodwill and that they really care about the deal and they're respecting it. And for a whole year, they were basically giving the United States time to come back, to change their mind, to not escalate. That if they wanted to escalate, they could have the next stage started doing, ramping up uranium enrichment from the limit is 3.67%. They could have ramped that up or added more centrifuges. Could have done anything. They waited a whole year, and then they responded by tit for tat, because there are many things that happen which people like to forget. The Israelis assassinated an Iranian nuclear scientist. His name is Mohsen Fakhrizadeh in November of 2019, right? Hold on. It was, November 2020. So they assassinated him outside Tehran. And on top of that, what happened is the Israelis sabotaged the Karaj and Natanz nuclear facilities in Iran. They cut the power in one instance, and then there was an explosive device used in another instance. And the Americans killed General Soleimani. So you see all of these attacks. Like, can you imagine if Iran blew up an American nuclear facility? Like, there would be a war. There's a war. If they did that to the Israelis, there would be a war. But they do these things that are really considered, this is nuclear terrorism. When you go and you blow up a fucking nuclear facility, you know how much the concern they have about Russian forces in Chernobyl right now? Do you remember? Or in Zaporizhia? Look. You remember when they captured the nuclear plants over a month ago? They were saying, "Oh my God, Russia shelled a nuclear facility." I didn't see anywhere the same amount of outrage when Israel blew up multiple nuclear facilities in Iran. Like, are you crazy? Like, do you see the double standard here? Like, it's okay to attack a nuclear facility as long as Israel's doing it to Iran. It's crazy. Like, they only care about the environment and having a nuclear disaster if it's happening to Ukrainians and being done by Russians. Otherwise, it's totally fine. Israel can do whatever it wants. So just going back to my original point, Iran ramped up its nuclear program only in response to those attacks. So when the Israelis killed Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, they assassinated this nuclear scientist. The Iranian parliament, they voted on a new decree. So they basically said, from here to 3 months, if there is no sanctions relief, so if the sanctions are not removed, then Iran will stop complying with the additional protocol. So again, just to translate what that means into English, they basically gave the United States 3 months to lift sanctions on Iran, or else they would not allow the nuclear inspectors from the UN to film inside the nuclear facilities anymore. Okay? And why did they say 3 months? Because this was in November 2020. It was right after the election in the US, and they were waiting basically for Biden to get inaugurated in January to get back, so because he promised to get back in the nuclear deal. So they were giving him time to get inaugurated and then remove the sanctions and get back in the nuclear deal. So do you see how even after the worst transgressions and acts of terrorism and assassinations, Iran is always giving headroom, is always leaving leaving an opportunity for diplomacy instead of burning bridges every step of the way. And this is what makes me so furious, because this is common sense. It's so easy to see that they're demonstrating goodwill, and all they do in the media is fucking lie. It's really one of the worst. I'm not kidding, man. I cover a lot of topics, right? The Assange case, the nuclear deal. This is all original reporting. I talk about Syria, so many topics. Like, I specialize in international affairs, and I'm telling you, the nuclear deal, this is one of the fields that the media lie in the most. It's really, really, really bad. So, what happened, actually, what ended up happening, and again, there's a whole playlist on the channel. I went through everything. What happened in the end is Biden got inaugurated, and he did not get back in the nuclear deal. So the head of the IAEA, which is Rafael Grossi, he had to fly to Tehran, and he scored a new deal with the Iranians, a temporary deal that had to be renewed every month, every 30 days. And this deal goes like this. Iran would continue to allow the cameras in the nuclear facilities to record what's going on, but they would not give the footage to the UN. They would take it aside and put it in a black box. And when I say UN, I'm just saying, I mean the IAEA, obviously. It's just shorter to say. So the idea was that Iran would continue recording, but they won't give the footage until sanctions are removed, okay? And they said that if sanctions are not removed in 3 months, they'll destroy the footage. And now every single month, the Director General of the IAEA, he would fly again to Tehran and renew the agreement again. And this is while the talks were happening in Vienna, okay? So once again, Iran giving really lots of headroom, lots of space for diplomacy, showing that there's goodwill, that they want the deal to be revived, for the United States to rejoin, and never burning a bridge. They never destroyed the footage. They never retaliated in the same caliber. They instead, for example, when they changed the uranium enrichment, you need above 90% of enriched uranium to build a nuclear bomb, right? That's not the only thing, obviously. Even though CNN would like you to believe that. That's not how it works. But my point is that when Iran increased its level of uranium enrichment, it didn't go from 3.67% like all the way to 90. There are obviously technological hurdles in the way also. But what they did is they went to 20%, right? So this shows that it's basically they're putting pressure on the West. It's like, watch out, because we can raise the uranium enrichment. So get back in the deal. Let's talk. Let's get back to diplomacy. And it's just a form of having leverage, right? It's a form of creating leverage. So they raised it from 3.67%, which is the limit in the deal, to 20%. And then from 20% to 60% after, I can't remember the order. There's so many things that happened. I think it was after they assassinated Fakhrizadeh. I could be wrong though. But again, the main events were the sabotage at the nuclear plants, the assassination of General Soleimani, and of course, Fakhrizadeh. So my point is that Iran always left room for diplomacy. Always, always, always. And you never hear that in the media. They only say that Iran is violating the deal. It's not violating the deal. That's a fucking lie. And these journalists who are garbage, who are complete trash, should maybe sit down and read the goddamn deal instead of making things up. So that's the kind of frustration. It's like when when you've dedicated a lot of time to a subject and you spend a lot of time covering it and you see this garbage in the media, it makes you furious because you're specialized in it, and you can really break it down point by point and debunk every single thing. So again, if you want independent original reporting on the Iran nuclear deal on the ground, there's a playlist on my channel right here, and I even have some good interviews with the Russian ambassador. So he's the guy leading the negotiations for the Russians. And then the head of the Iranian delegation, the Iranian chief negotiator, and of course, Professor Marandi, who's an advisor to the delegation. So really, really great content you won't get anywhere else, and really giving you the full picture and not just this garbage on mainstream media. So yeah. Just 1 second, guys. Okay, so I'm curious, how many of you guys are new here? Did you just find the channel? And how did you find it? Was it recommended to you? I'm actually curious. Or did you maybe follow me just recently on Twitter and you saw the link when I posted it? I'm curious to see how you found it. Hold on, let me read the comments. Because there's a delay, so I gotta wait. Oh, Bill says Twitter. Okay, great. Abyss says, I have been here since 10 to 20k subscribers. Hey, I'm glad to have you, and it's a pleasure that you've witnessed the growth. So thank you. Colorful Dawn says the YouTube algorithm suggested me. You're kidding. You're kidding. And JC says, yes, recommended in my feed. This is brilliant. I'm very happy about that because I cover international politics and U.S. politics in the Middle East in a way that is not conventional. That is it's not what you're gonna hear on CNN. And the algorithm, I don't know. From what I can tell, and others have said, it's not always favorable. But I'm not gonna lie. I've been very fortunate. Alhamdulillah, thank God, and I'm glad you guys found the channel. That's wonderful. Theodore has been following you as long as you've been here on YouTube, Rich. Well, that's great. That's really great. Ali says, لحقتك لما كان عندك 30,000 متابع. So Ali says since 30,000 subscribers. That's really great. Wow. Anna says, same with me, Richard was in my recommended. That's brilliant. I'm really happy, guys, because, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm not saying anything wrong. I don't, okay, maybe I cuss a bit, but I mean, I'm not saying anything really that controversial. I'm just talking about, international affairs and U.S. politics in the Middle East. And I swear to God, like every time I'm like, shit, did I say that in a way that the bots, like the algorithm is gonna decide it didn't like, and then it's really exhausting having to think like that. Like they make you feel like you're a criminal just for speaking basic. Yeah, it's really nothing. I mean, it's really not that controversial. But I guess in a world where saying anything that differs from CNN or the NATO narrative, whatever you want to call it, let's say the Western press, is disinformation now. I guess it is controversial in a way. Anyway, I'm just happy and I'm glad, and you guys found the channel. I'm happy to have you here, and hope you find everything informative. That you, when you leave, you've gained something, gained some insight. So yeah, I guess the truth is controversial, as Tipu is saying. Or sorry, it was Lima, but Tipu says you popped up in my notifications. Great. Thank you, Malcolm, for your kind words, and thank you, Marks, as well. And Joe says you are one of the few. You guys are so kind. There's so many comments. I can't even read all of them. It's scrolling too fast. Thank you for your kind words, Joe. You're very kind. And Tony says, have you seen the interview of Colonel Richard Black by Mike Bellington? I have not. Hold on, I have to add this to the list because one of you asked me about Peru earlier. So I don't know if I'll have time to go through everything now, but if not, the next time. And I'm just curious, were you guys here when I covered that video from the French journalist? There was a French journalist who went to Ukraine, and he comes back and he goes on this talk show and he basically explained how the Americans are running everything in Ukraine. And obviously this is very significant, right? Because so far, the conventional wisdom is that don't get involved, don't put boots on the ground. Even with advisors, it's touchy because you don't want to see, you don't want to have the Russians feeling that NATO is directly involved. I know that's kind of a joke at this point because how could they not be directly involved? But the idea is that, you don't want to escalate things into a nuclear confrontation, into hot war. it's already bad enough. And that was really damning, because it wasn't just, oh, we're sending weapons to the Ukrainians. No. The guy coordinating the foreign mercenaries is an American. So this is very, very significant. And it's not the Ukrainians. That was a very, very damning interview, and I'm glad we saw it. Tricky Vicky says, Ukraine is the 51st state of fascist America. I'm afraid you're wrong. That's Israel. That's an old joke. It's nothing special, but, you know. Lana says, could you have more history talks? I loved your stream when you talked about Syria. Tikrami, I would absolutely love to do that. And can I just ask which one you're talking about? Because do you mean when I did the talk about the Middle East? I had this university talk that I gave a few weeks ago. But that wasn't just about Syria. I talked about several things, right? I talked about Pakistan and like going to the transition to a multipolar world. But in general, I am very happy that you said that, and I would love nothing more. So I will try to do more historical things. And yeah. Hamid Reza says, have you ever considered translating your analysis in different languages so more people would be blessed to hear the truth? Well, again, you're very kind. And as you guys know, I speak 4 languages, and I love languages. And really, I'd be very happy to have the work translated into more languages. There's just a few obstacles. Number one, I don't know all that many people who can translate the work. You know, once in a while, somebody will email me and say, hey, I translated this video for you or this article, and I'm very humbled and I post it. So thank you for that. And the logistics of it right now, it's a bit complicated, because in the past, if you translated a video on YouTube, you could upload it as a user, even though you're not the owner of the channel. There was some kind of sort of system where you could just upload it and contribute. And they changed that. So I think now you have to send the file to me, and then I have to upload it, and I'm not sure how it works. But just to answer your question, I'd be very humbled if you or someone else, you would like to translate the videos into Persian or Russian, Turkish, anything. I'm very happy to see that, and that would be great. Thank you. And if you send it to me, I will post it as well. So just give me a second. Thank you very much to Jack for the donation on CashApp, and I appreciate that very much. And to Linda as well. You're very kind. I don't see any notes, but I appreciate it very much. And hold on, let me check what number we're at now. Did you guys like the new crab dance that Claudia made? I think it's pretty good. So right now we are at 868, and the goal is 900. I cannot believe we have gotten this far. That's quite the achievement. So I hope we can get to 900 subscribers on Patreon. Basically, if you like my work, if you want to support independent media, please consider donating monthly on Patreon for as little or as much as you'd like. You can put in any number you like. These are just random ones. $2, $5, doesn't matter. I'm grateful either way, and it helps the channel to grow. And, you know, I couldn't do this without you, so thank you very much. And our goal is to get to 900, so we are just short of 32 subscribers. So just 32 more people, and we will get to 900. And that would be fantastic. Thank you to everybody. And again, I just want to say thank you also to everyone who's liking the video, commenting, or sharing it. This is also really good and helps the channel grow and spread the message. And if you post the videos on social media, remember, one of you guys advised me to say this, so I try to repeat this. If you post one of my videos on social media, use the hashtags. Do hashtag Richard Medhurst. So that would be really good. And yeah, thank you. I have to plug the show at least once during a live stream. So there's the Patreon, and there's PayPal as well. Again, I don't do anything like paid, so I don't have any extra content or something. Everything I do is free, and if you want to support, great. If not, that's also fine. I'm grateful either way. So thank you. I see a comment here from Pana. It says, would you dig a little deeper into Serbia and Kosovo and how NATO is building an army in Albania? let me add that to the list, and I appreciate you guys giving me these topics for next time. So I will prepare something, because I told you I have a very important interview today on the channel with Yaroshenko, who's the prisoner that the US just exchanged with Russia. And I'll be interviewing him in just about 12 hours, actually, less than 12 hours. So I need to get some sleep. But thank you for that. And I'm seeing if I missed anything else. I think I got everybody. Oh, American Autopsy says, been rocking with you since around 45 or 50K. I have a channel myself, Richard, and I'd love to have you as a guest sometime. Well, please send me an email, because I don't know how I'll keep your contact information from the super chat, but it's rmedhurst@protonmail.com. And hopefully we can work something out. I'd really love to do that, because I honestly, the last 2 weeks with the Assange thing and everything else, I've only been, I also had another project to finish, and the Yemen article, that was the other thing. I've been bogged down, and I'd like to go on some other shows. So I appreciate the invitation. Thank you. Adrian says, can you please explain how Russia and Chechnya went from adversaries to allies in the war against Ukraine? This is a very good question. And again, I will keep it for next time, because I really have to get some sleep before the Yaroshenko interview. So please, again, guys, just to be clear, in about 11 hours, so it's 6 p.m. Central European summertime. That's when the interview will be here live. So if you're in New York, that's noon. If you're in LA, it's 9 a.m. If you're in London, it's 5 p.m. If you're in Paris, it's 6 p.m. Berlin, 6 p.m. So yeah, I hope to see you guys there. And I'm excited for it. So yeah, again, thank you to everybody. I think I read all your comments. Forgive me if I missed them. And I'll see you guys shortly in about 12 hours, hopefully. And it's funny, I never ever plug the social media. Like, this doesn't even enter my mind. So the links are below if you want to follow on Twitter. That's like the most unattractive, boring plug ever. Don't follow me on Twitter, but if you want to, the links are below. No, you should. All the links are in the chat. I've just pasted them. So yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stream and found it insightful and you gained knowledge from it, and or it was cathartic, looking at all this bullshit that's happening in the world. And everything will be up. Again, thank you for sharing the videos, liking, commenting, subscribing, and supporting the show monthly. I'm grateful for everything. You guys are the best. Take care. Ma salame, and bye-bye.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
A is for
all men and women created by you know the thing.
B is for
I'm beginning to see why your wife left you.
C is for
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
D is for
Don't worry, I'm so serious. Children, I love to hear them.
E is for
An excuse to walk by the dealer and say, no, I'm not going to be a mule. I got something to do. I got to go do boom, boom, boom.
F is for
Friend, and she's a friend. She's been my friend in and out of public life.
G is for
Go to Joe 30330.
H is for
hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down.
I is for
I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate.
J is for
Just look at the record.
I have President Biden, Vice President Biden.
Well, I tell you what, if you look at my record and you still doubt about my commitment, then you should vote for somebody else.
K is for
Kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
L is for
The lion, dog, face, pony soldier.
M is for
Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone, make sure the kids hear words.
N is for
NATO.
O is for
The only African American woman that's ever been elected to the United States Senate.
P is for
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
R is for
Rest her soul, and although she's your mom's still alive.
S is for
Send a text to the word united.
T is for
Truth over facts.
U is for
Union workers, the UAW took incredible cuts in their future.
V is for
I'll vote for somebody else.
All right, thanks so much.
W is for
Wait, you're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay.
X is for
Xi Jinping.
Y is for
And you ain't black.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
A is for
All men and women.